We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Dawn of DC Night Terrors Free Comic Book Day Special Edition 2023. There's only one story in here, and it is a preview for Night Terrors. That cover's really cool, but this story has nothing to do with that. So this is a nightmare Robin is having, and he is running around looking at these creepy, monstrous versions of his friends and family. And there's some eyeballs and other things, and then Batman wakes him up and gives him like a little metaphorical hug. It was just kind of not real interesting. It didn't really sell me on the Night Terrors stuff. This is some dog crap art. There's a couple panels that work, but most of it was really weird quasi-manga art. I don't know what I'm looking at half the time. This was just a mess. This doesn't seem to be in any way critical to the storyline. It's just a free thing. So it's not necessary to read this before you get into the Night Terrors stuff. I won't bother tracking it down. Please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Night Terrors First Blood, Issue 1 from DC Comics in 2023. Now this issue really kicks the whole thing off, which is largely a series of one-shots, loosely connected because of the general premise, but also through Night Terrors, which is going to be, I think, a 4-issue miniseries throughout July and August of 2023. So this issue is written by Joshua Williamson, art by Howard Porter, colors by Brad Anderson, letters by Troy Pateri, cover by Howard Porter and Hi-Fi. Now, I really like the cover because it does relate to what's going on in the book, but everybody's just kind of posing. I noticed Sandman in the background, but he's not in this issue. And Deadman plays a huge part in this, which I'm really intrigued by because this premise is pretty interesting. So we start off with John D, better known as Dr. Destiny, figuring out that he's in some sort of nightmare, and somebody is hunting him and causing him all kinds of problems. It turns out they might be after something called the Nightmare Stone, which is apparently related to his Dream Stone, and he may have hid it within the nightmares of his enemies. Now, Deadman kind of gets involved because he notices there's something weird going on around Superman and Wonder Woman when they go by, and somebody broke into the Hall of Justice and left a dream construct of Dr. Destiny in there, which leads Batman to Arkham, where something is going on with Dr. Destiny. Now, Deadman tries to warn them, but it doesn't really work out, and Batman really hates what happened. Now, of course, Waller's involved peripherally, so there's probably going to be a Suicide Squad one-shot as well, which I don't care about. She's an annoying character that probably should have been dealt with a long time ago. Seems kind of silly they keep making her out to be female Nick Fury when she's not. But there's some really interesting ideas here and pretty horrific looking bad guys. There is a good cliffhanger ending where we find out what the bad guy's name is. I don't want to give too much away because there are some really interesting plot elements in here. I thought it was really well written, and it's got a lot of really cool ideas that hopefully will have a good payoff. Unfortunately, I really do not trust these things where they have a lot of peripheral one-shots because they tend to be garbage. But I have to say I did enjoy this. This really is more issue 1 than anything else, but they're selling it as a separate book because it's really setting everything up. But if you're going to read Night Terrors, you really do need to read this issue. There's a lot going on in here that is setting up the Night Terrors storyline, and Deadman plays a really big part in this issue, and I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. But I enjoyed it quite a bit. Is it worth $6? Not really. But it was a fun read. The art is a slightly sketchier version of Porter's normal art, and I have to admit that it's really hit and miss for me. At times it was really sketchy, especially with smaller characters, and it looked kind of rushed, but I got kind of used to it as the storyline went on. I'm just not in love with it. It's not his best work. There are panels that are fantastic and some that are really bad. So I was a little concerned about that if this is going to be the art, it looks like it was very hurried. So I would say try and get it for like $3 or wait for the trade, but it's not worth $6. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Night Terror's Batman issue 1. It's a 2023 story from DC Comics as part of the Night Terror's storyline. This issue follows Night Terror's first blood. So Batman is trapped in the dream realm like everybody else, and he is trying to face off with Insomnia. Batman's been training himself to fight within his dreams and nightmares for a very long time, using that as a means of defense. And he quickly figures out that he cannot wake up because Deadman is in his body, so he can't regain control yet. Insomnia is kind of following him around his nightmares, and he has to face off with several fears, but there's one that he didn't seem to have planned for, and we're left with a cliffhanger ending. Then there's a backup story about Damian Wayne, which really shouldn't be in Night Terror's Batman, it should be in the Robin book, I would think, where Damian goes to see some old guy about the nightmare that he had in the Free Comic Book Day issue, and he wants to study some of their books and scrolls, and he comes across one that shows Deadman in it. But before he can act upon that, Insomnia's plan goes into motion, but it looks like Damian might be immune to it. Both stories were written by Joshua Williamson. The main story was drawn by Gilliam March, with colors by Tomio Mori, letters by Troy Pateri, and the backup story had art by David LaFuente, colors by Rex Locus, letters by Troy Pateri. Now both stories were edited by Ben Abernathy, and the cover was by Gilliam March and Tomio Mori, which the cover's not too bad actually. It does relate. There is this bat creature that has a gun for a head, which kind of is nightmare fuel, but this is different than Jonathan Crane's usual schemes. And I thought the main story was good. The backup story, the general premise is okay, but it's not going to be followed up on until Night Terror's issue 3, and the art in the backup story is total garbage. It is lazy knockoff manga, and I absolutely hated it. It looks very, very amateur hour. The main story is fine. I'm not a giant fan of some of the stylistic choices they're going with, the more manga flair to things, but it at least looked more like a regular comic book as opposed to whatever bad deviant art and Tumblr art the backup story was aimed at. So is it worth $5? No. It's worth about $2. Get it out of a bargain bin. It's a good overall story. It's just kind of stuff we've already seen before. Yeah, they're looking for the Nightmare Stone. It's hidden in some hero's dream, but this was mostly a fight book with Batman wandering through his dreams. It really is very difficult to see this as anything other than a slight derivation from what they did with Jonathan Crane in several issues of Batman books over the years. It just really doesn't have anything new to it. So if you could get it for about $2 or $2.50, I would say it's probably worth that. But that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button, share it around, and subscribe if you haven't. And if you want to support the channel in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Night Terror's Black Adam issue 1. This is a two-part miniseries from DC Comics in 2023, and it ties into the Night Terror's storyline summer event. This issue was written and illustrated by Jeremy Hahn, colors by Nick Filardi, letters by Troy Pateri, main cover by Hahn and Filardi, edited by Ben Abernathy. The cover's pretty cool. It got me to buy the book. I don't know why Black Adam's not wearing his cape anymore, but I guess that's just the way they're doing things now. A lot of comic writers and artists don't really understand superheroes anymore, so it's not surprising they got rid of the cape. So Black Adam's in the middle of a fight when Insomnia hits with all the living nightmare things going on in the world, and Black Adam is having a difficult time understanding what is actually going on. He quickly figures out that the city he is now in is some sort of mishmash of places that he's been before, and his powers are acting weird. He even gets turned back into a human for a little while, and he runs into a cat named Bast, who is not the Egyptian god, just a cat with that name. And together they're going to go have a wacky adventure. There is a pretty gruesome scene near the end of the book where Adam sees his family destroyed. It's not bad. I would say it's pretty acceptable for teens. Like I said, one gruesome scene. My main complaint with the book is not the story. The story is fine. It's a little slow paced for my taste, but the art is really the main hindrance. While the monsters look cool, Adam frequently looks disproportionate. Like his head does not match the size of his body. There's a couple of shots where he's flying that look really weird. The artist has a lot of potential, but needs to learn anatomy and stop relying so heavily on what appear to be 3D models. So I don't know if this is supposed to be stylistic, but it makes it look like the artist really needs to learn how to mesh foreground and background and learn perspective shots without using Photoshop to alter body parts. Honestly, I thought this would have been a Dynamite book based solely on the art. So the artist isn't really ready for prime time, but people do look cool when they're in costume. The monsters look really cool. It's just proportions are out of whack on Black Adam, and it makes it look really disconcerting and uncanny valley, and really takes you out of the storyline. But the story was fine. It could have been condensed into a one-shot instead of a 2-issue storyline. I don't see any reason why it couldn't have, but it's a cash grab, so that's what DC and Marvel do nowadays. Is it worth $5? No, just because the art is so amateur. So if you can find this for about $2, I would say it's worth reading, but the art really holds it back. So grab it out of a bargain bin, or wait and get it in a collected work, but it's just not worth $5. That's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Night Terrors Poison Ivy Issue 1. This is a 2-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023 and ties into the mini-series Night Terrors from DC. Alright, this issue was written by G. Willow Wilson, pencils by Atagun Ilhan, inks by Mark Morales, colors by Arif Prianto, letters by Hussein Otsmain Allahu, cover by Jessica Fong, assistant editor Jessica Burby, edited by Ariana Turturro, group editor Ben Abernathy. So we get this long rambling series of caption boxes about dreams and homes and something. Poison Ivy takes a nap and wakes up in a dream world with a Insomnia looking sun, and it's very Stepford Wives. Harley Quinn is there and declares her love for Poison Ivy, of course, and makes her a cake with like fingers and eyeballs and stuff in it. Batman's their neighbor who's cooking out, and Selina's there too, but there's something definitely off, obviously, and that's when the real star of these books comes in, and that's Janet from HR, who figures out real quick something's not right here, and she realizes right away that this is very uncanny valley and tries to talk to Poison Ivy, but everybody turns all weird and sinister and gets bug eyes and tries to kill her and stuff. Meanwhile, Poison Ivy's going all in on this. Overall, I think this should have been a book called Janet from HR. It would have been more interesting that way. She was the star of the issue. Pamela is in it for the first quarter of the book, and then it just kind of veers off into being about Janet and what she's doing, and she does most of the plot furtherance, and Poison Ivy just kind of accepts everything. The characters did look sufficiently creepy. The art style did work well for that, and it is kind of nightmare fuel, but it's not really an art style I like a lot, because before people start looking very surreal and uncanny valley, Harley Quinn still looks weird. It looks like her head is too big for her neck most of the time, and the weird Nightwing leaning over washing the car thing was a little disturbing, but overall it was a very simplistic storyline with a lot of pointless talking, which is real common with G. Willow Wilson. She's very bad with dialogue and rambling on, so this time it's in caption boxes and a lot of talking, and it just really kind of went nowhere a lot. And like I said, this should have been about Janet from HR more than anything, because the entire Pamela storyline could have been just cut from the book. This probably would have been better as a one-shot instead of a two-parter, because from as much extraneous stuff as in here, they could have condensed it down into a single issue. But it does have a very creepy vibe, just like the cover presents. I don't really like the cover. It's a little too busy. The color scheme doesn't really pop out or anything. It all kind of just blurs together, and there's no real focus that way, so I didn't care for the cover that much. It's not badly drawn. It just doesn't seem to have a central focus, and the colors don't help that at all. It's very flat, matte tones, and I don't like that. It should have had some leading lines or something that led to Poison Ivy. Instead, you mostly are looking at the hair on the head on the table, and you don't really notice the heads in the sunflowers, stuff like that. So overall, this was pretty mediocre. I think if it had been about Janet from HR and been a one-shot, it probably would have been a better book. But we'll see if issue 2 could salvage it. Right now, I'd say, like a lot of the others from this Night Terrors thing, it's definitely not worth the $5. Try and get it for $1 or $2, and maybe then you'll get some entertainment value out of it. If you're a huge Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy fan, maybe it'll be worth a couple more bucks, but I doubt it. Yet another miss in these cash grab miniseries. It's not the worst one, but it's definitely not the best. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors Ravager Issue 1. This was written by Ed Brisson, art by Dexter Soy, Veronica Gandini did the colors, Troy Pateri on letters, Ben Abernathy editor, Jeff Spokes did the cover art. Cover's really good. That actually got me to buy the book. The zombies in the background do relate kind of to what's going on, but not exactly. So we start off with these monstrous zombie things killing people, and they are chasing after this girl. Ravager happens to wake up in a field of some kind and rushes in to help and saves this young girl, and that's when we find out that the monster is called the Murder Man, and he has this slaughter squadron, Rager and Vexer, that help him. Then we learn the girl's name is Rose Madison, and that seems to be not an issue at all for Ravager / Rose Madison. And she realizes that something isn't quite right here when we find out that the Murder Man is apparently killing people that took care of Rose when she was a child, but that didn't really happen that way. And then something bad happens and we're left with a cliffhanger ending. We do get a glimpse of what's going on in the real world, and it has something to do with Stormwatch. I haven't been reading Stormwatch because I don't really care. I don't think that the Wildstorm stuff should be in the main DC universe. I don't know why they incorporated it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, so I just ignore those books. But this was actually a pretty shockingly good story. It had a lot of twists and turns, and it had a very surreal, dreamlike feel. The twist was pretty predictable, but I thought it was pretty well done, and the art was pretty solid for what the story was. It's a bit gruesome, it's very adult, it is hyper violent, but there's some really cool scenes in here. The artist has a good handle on perspective shots. It's not a bunch of flat images, and Ravager's costume looked really cool through the whole thing. So pretty solid art all around, and a pretty interesting story. So I'd actually recommend this one. A lot of the Night Terrors stuff has been mediocre, but this one's actually good. So I'm interested to see how issue 2 plays out. Until then, this is a solid recommendation. It is a mini-series. It is only 2 issues, but even though it does tie into the Night Terrors mini-series, you don't have to really know a whole lot about that for this to be a complete story. So hopefully it's just accessible by the masses, as this is a nightmare she's having. But we'll see how issue 2 plays out. But if you're going to buy any of these supplemental books for Night Terrors, I'd recommend this one. That'll do it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors, The Joker, Issue 1. This is a 2-part micro-series from DC Comics that ties into the Night Terrors event from 2023. This was written by Matthew Rosenberg, Stefano Raffaelli, artist Romulo Fajardo Jr. on colors, Tom Napolitano on letters, edited by Ben Abernathy. The cover is also by Stefano Raphael, not sure how to pronounce that name. And effectively, we're already in the dream world. They just sort of jump right in, and the Joker and his henchmen accidentally kill Batman, and they don't know what to do, so they hide his body and then go on crime sprees, and all of their schemes really meet with no resistance. So it really makes the Joker depressed, so he goes to get a real job and works at Wayne Enterprises under the name Johann Kaiser. So apparently they don't do background checks, but we have to see him interact with various office personnel for a long time, and then one of his supervisors has an accident with the microwave in a comically ludicrous way, and we learn that the big boss at the office is actually Insomnia, and he promotes the Joker a couple times, but the Joker is still having a rough time of things, and there's reported Batman sightings, which makes him mad because Batman's corpse is in his closet. This was a very strange book. Parts of it were pretty good, other parts were just silly. It wasn't ever funny though. It just had its moments that could have been funny, and they just sort of fell flat. The art is equally a mixed bag. There's some decent art in here, and then there's a lot of wasted potential where there's ill-defined backgrounds or people's faces look a little off. Like they didn't bother to do the effort to really detail people's faces. I didn't hate it, it was just very mediocre. There's some great panels in here, and then there's some really tepid ones, which is very confusing because there's a scene where Joker's running down the road and ducks into an alley, and it looks really detailed and good, but when he's in the office, it's hyper simplistic, and he has to talk to this Helen lady for way too long. It's like 3 pages. It's really boring. Overall, I was a little disappointed. I didn't hate it, but it was just kind of tepid. So if you're gonna pick this up, don't pay more than $1 for it. $5 is way out of line. The cover's boring too. I just didn't really care too much. They've done these type of stories of Joker before, and I don't even know why they bothered with this. They could have just put his book on hiatus for 2 months, but that seems to be kind of a theme with some of these, is they just threw out a title with the Night Terrors logo because they already have a title with that character in it. So I was pretty disappointed with this one, but it's not the worst thing I've ever read. It was just forgettable, and I absolutely feel cheated for my $5. This is a $2 book on its best day, but I would say get it for $1. And better yet, go read the John Carpenter one-shot that he did of the Joker. That's a far superior and way funnier book. That's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Night Terrors Issue 1. This is a 4-part miniseries from DC Comics, part of their 2023 summer event. Written by Joshua Williamson, art by Giuseppe Camuncoli, Stefano Nisi, and Casper Wingard. Colors by Frank Martin and Casper Wingard. Letters by Troy Pateri. I have the cover by Ivan Reyes, Danny Miki, and Brad Anderson. Edited by Ben Abernathy. Cover's pretty cool, and it does relate to what's going on in the book. We start off with an introduction to Boston Brand, better known as Deadman, and a little bit about his origin, which really could have been squeezed into 1 page instead of 2 pages with really big panels. And then we jump over to what's going on right now, where Insomnia is fighting with Batman, who is currently possessed by Deadman. And Deadman's had about enough of this nonsense, so he tries to get into Insomnia. And we learn a little bit more about what's going on. He is after the Nightmare Stone, as we learned in Night Terrors First Blood. And it has some kind of connection to the original Sandman and an unsolved case. So Boston also sees the origin of Insomnia, that he was a patient at Arkham Asylum, possibly in some kind of coma. We don't get much more beyond that, but Insomnia apparently thrives on nightmares as opposed to good memories or any other motivation like that. So he's hiding something in his past. Now Deadman has to use the Batmobile to get out of there and do something kind of desperate, which Batman absolutely would not have approved of. And we get an interesting hero return. Overall, the story is pretty solid. Some of the art is really good, some of it is a little too manga for my taste. And it's a little jarring when you see the art styles clash. So the scenes near the end at the graveyard were really cool, and the scenes that open the story up where Deadman is at the circus, those are pretty well done. The stuff in the middle is, it's a little hit and miss for me. It is a $4 book. I thought it would be a $5 or $6 book, so I didn't feel too cheated for my money. I thought the story is pretty solid, even though I have some quibbles about some of the art. It is a decent story so far. And I like that they are dusting off some more obscure heroes and letting them be the stars of the storyline, like Deadman. So that's kind of nice. There are a lot of peripheral one-shots that seem to be kind of related, but so far the only one you have to actually read is First Blood. If you haven't read Night Terrors First Blood, this story is going to make almost no sense. They just drop you in the middle of a situation with Batman and Insomnia and give you no context to work with. So there's very little to get you into the story if you didn't read the other ones. It isn't too bad. You could probably get away with it and get a general idea what's going on, but I think for the sake of really enjoying the story, you'll want to pick up First Blood. But that aside, it was a pretty good installment in the storyline. So if you get a chance to check it out, I'd recommend it. That's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Night Terrors Green Lantern Issue 1. This is a 2023 miniseries from DC Comics, and it's a tie-in to the Night Terrors event miniseries. This issue was written by Jeremy Adams, pencils by Eduardo Pancia, inks by Julio Ferreira, colors by Luis Guerrero, letters by Dave Sharp, cover by Lucio Perillo. Assistant editor was Jillian Grant, edited by Paul Kaminsky. That cover is really really, really good, and it does relate to what's in the book. So that got me to buy it. I was actually going to skip this one, but it does tie into the events of issue 2 of the 2023 Green Lantern series. It kind of picks up where that issue left off, with the Nightmare Wave about to hit the plane. Now, as soon as Hal goes full Green Lantern mode, he is back at the funeral of his father. Now, I didn't realize Hal was Jewish, but he ends up in this really horrifying nightmare. Like, this is really dark. And then finds himself immediately in a hangar, and something's not quite right there. And he doesn't seem to realize he's in a dream, like most dreams, and he runs into Aben Sur, who quickly tries to steal his energy. And then he's confronted by some other guys. He encounters all sorts of people before he starts to figure out what's going on. And we are left with a really dark cliffhanger ending where he's going to face off with a very old nemesis. There's a backup story about Sinestro, written by Alex Segura, art by Mario Fox Faculio, colors by Prasad Rao Pressy, letters by Dave Sharp, assistant editor Gillian Grant, edited by Paul Kaminsky. And that is basically just Sinestro wandering around, whining to himself and feeling sorry for himself. He gets beat up a little bit, and then the Nightmare Wave hits and he finds himself face to face with different iterations of himself. That was pretty irrelevant and it was okay. The art's fine, it was just very pointless. That should have been its own one shot and not a backup story if they were going to do it, because it just doesn't really mesh too well with the other storyline. So they're a bit jarring in styles, and I didn't really care for the Sinestro story. The Hal Jordan one was really good and the art was really solid. So overall, I really liked the main story. The backup I could give or take. It just really didn't do anything for me. But I didn't have a problem with this one. Compared to most of the Night Terrors miniseries stuff, this actually I didn't have a problem paying $5 for. I thought the art was solid and the story was interesting and it's got a lot of potential. And if you read issue 2 of Green Lantern, this one does relate because it picks up where that one left off. So this will likely be in the trade paperback for that storyline and also in the Night Terrors compilation. You do not need to read this book to enjoy the Night Terrors miniseries. All of these seem very separate from that, except for the fact that they're loose tie-ins and that they happen at the same time as the main storyline. But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description for various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors Robin, issue 1. This is a 2-part micro-series from DC Comics, which ties into the 2023 event Night Terrors. This issue is written by Kenny Porter, art by Miguel Mendocia, Adriano Lucas on colors, Tom Napolitano on letters, Ivan Reyes, Danny Miki, and Brad Anderson did the cover. Assistant editor was Jessica Burby. Ariana Totoro was the editor, Ben Abernathy group editor. Cover's not bad, and it does relate to what's going on in the book. So Tim Drake has been doing overtime as a hero, and Oracle's a little worried about him, but then she checks in on Red Hood, who apparently doesn't understand that his hair flopping around like that's going to leave DNA all over the place, and he uses rubber bullets now. And that's when the Nightmare Wave hits, while they're both trying to do something separate, but they get jammed together into the same nightmare world, and Red Hood tests that theory by punching Tim right in the face as hard as he can. They end up getting separated and dragged into their own nightmares. Tim has to relive his father's death from Identity Crisis number 5 over and over and over again, while Red Hood has to deal with these Red Hood type creatures with crowbar hands. And Tim's menace is a seemingly emaciated version of himself or some other Robin type creature, and Robin is quickly bordering on breaking, and Red Hood isn't having much better luck by trying to attack everything. Overall, the story wasn't too bad. The dialogue's a little rough though, and what kind of annoyed me through the whole thing is, unfortunately, a lot of modern writers do not understand the point of a secret identity. Throughout the book, Red Hood refers to Robin as Drake or Tim, and that is really obnoxious. Why even bother calling him Robin at all? Just call him Tim Drake, let everyone know who he is. It's silly, and it kind of goes against the entire point of having a secret identity, like I said. But this wasn't bad. It wasn't the worst I've read. The art's okay. It's not really a $5 book. I would say $2 $5 is fine, maybe $3. Red Hood was a bit obnoxious through the whole thing, but it was just middle of the road, forgettable. Not really something I'm going to remember a year from now or 2 weeks from now, but the cover looked kind of cool. I'll recommend it if you can find it for $3 or less, but beyond that, I don't think I really got my $5 worth out of it, so try and avoid paying anything more than that. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors Shazam Issue 1. This is a two-part miniseries from DC Comics, which is a tie-in to the Night Terrors miniseries event. This issue was written by Mark Waid, pencils by Roger Cruz, inks by Wellington Diaz, colors by Reef Prianto, Troy Pateri on letters, cover by Dan Mora, assistant editor Rebecca Bonahan, edited by Paul Kaminsky. Cover's really good, I like it quite a bit, and it does relate to what's going on in the book, and that did get me to buy the issue. Unfortunately, the interior art is significantly different. So Mary finds that something weird is going on, and she's kind of known about it for a few days. She keeps having nightmares about Billy, who is dressed as Black Adam, but she can't quite bring herself to hit him. And she's having these nightmares of like the house being on fire, and every time she goes to sleep, she seems to be transforming between Mary Broomfield and Mary Marvel. So she keeps saying Shazam, and now her power base is different. They changed that in the Wonder Woman Shazam Lazarus Planet miniseries storyline, so she has a slightly different power set that's not really coming from the same energy source as Captain Marvel's, or the Captain as he's now known. Well, she's starting to catch on that there's something weird going on in the sleep realm, but she's not quite grasping when she's in and out of the nightmare world, and we're left with a pretty dark cliffhanger ending. Overall, I thought the story was actually pretty good. We get kind of glimpses of these monsters, and of course Insomnia's in here for a brief moment. He's trying to find the Nightmare Stone, and he thinks she might know where it is, just like the others. But Mary's not really exactly alert as to what's going on in the broader Night Terrors storyline, so she's a little out of her element without knowing the full context of the situation. But it's a really interesting story about her dark fears regarding her family and Billy, and her change in power set. So I thought it was a really good story, but the art is pretty rough. The art style doesn't really mesh with the story that they're presenting. It's not terrible, but I kind of hate the art style. It's a little too cartoony and rough looking. People's faces completely change from panel to panel, and it bothers me quite a bit. I know it's a stylistic thing, but like I said, this doesn't really lend itself to these type of stories. It's much more of a art style that would go with a social interaction book like Love and Rockets or something along those lines, where you're just dealing with people interacting in day-to-day life, vignettes and slice of life stuff, not really an adventure book kind of style. So big strike on the art, but the story was very entertaining, so I had no problem with that. So it's not really worth $5, but I would say pick it up for the story because it is pretty fun. Just try and get the book at a discount because the art really just does not match the storyline. So that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors, The Flash, Issue 1. This is a two-part miniseries from DC Comics that ties into the Night Terrors miniseries event. And this issue is written by Alex Packnadel, art by Daniel Bayliss, colors by Igor Monti, letters by Simon Boland, cover by Werther Del Adera. Assistant editor was Rebecca Bonahan, edited by Chris Rosa, group editor Paul Kaminsky. Cover's pretty good. I like the concept at least, though Wally's face could use probably some lips. So Barry's out doing his usual forensic stuff when he gets the call that something happened to Wally, and he runs to the hospital, argues with Jay for a minute, and then finds out that Wally got stabbed by the Spear of Destiny by Gorilla Grodd. When he goes to Iron Heights to talk to Grodd, he doesn't get a lot of answers, but he gets the feeling something funny's going on. When he goes up to the Watchtower, he runs into Hal Jordan, who is horribly scarred from issue 4, The Final Night. Nice reference. reference DC, and he has to try and get Hal to help him recreate the cosmic treadmill. So while he's trying to go back in time to save Wally, he figures out that there's something weird going on. This is one of the only books to not actually have Insomnia in the first issue. Wonder Woman was the other one that I've seen so far that didn't have that. In a lot of ways, this was a much more interesting story because you don't see Insomnia. Wally realizes there's something wrong, but he's not really aware that it's a dream. So I thought this was a pretty solid story. I'm not a fan of the art style. It's a little too cartoonish looking, like something out of a Sunday strip, and the perspective shots look good, but the body proportions often look very weird and exaggerated, almost like everybody is very, very lanky. So although I didn't like the art, I did like the story. Is it worth $5? No, get it out of a bargain bin for about half price. $2 or $3 is fine, but I didn't think it was anywhere near $5 good. Mostly because I thought the art was pretty weak, and the story, while interesting, just isn't $5 good. And this is not an essential book to the Night Terrors miniseries. It's an interesting one, but like most of these side quest books, they're not pivotal to the main storyline. They're pretty ancillary. Some of them have been very good, but others are at best mediocre. But that's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Night Terrors Zatanna Issue 1. This is a two-part micro-series from DC Comics, which ties into the Night Terrors 2023 miniseries event. This issue is written by Dennis Culver, drawn by David Baldion, colored by Rain Burrito, lettered by Pat Brousseau, edited by Ben Abernathy. I have the variant cover by Maiko Soyin and Romulo Fajardo Jr. Now, the cover's pretty good. I did like the tentacles look. It's pretty neat. So a good concept. I think her face needs a little work. It's a little creepy looking. Like her mouth looks off center for some reason. Otherwise, it's a good idea. Now, Zatanna is at the Hall of Justice trying to defend an unconscious Detective Chimp and Wonder Woman. And we get kind of a recap of what's going on because the Sleepless Knights are attacking her and they apparently have a queen. The Sleepless Queen. Now, Zatanna can't do much and she doesn't really know who to call, so she does a generic summoning spell for a hero and she gets Robot Man, which makes for a weird team up, but they try to make it work. And she really doesn't like Doom Patrol because one of their people named Mento was at the seance where her father was killed. So they have to escape to a magic panic room hidden deep within the Hall of Justice, which apparently the Hall of Justice is like a TARDIS. You can just add infinite amount of rooms and stuff into it. So they have to try and get away from nightmare creatures that are sent after them by the Sleepless Queen, which looks suspiciously like people they cared about. But things are going to get a lot worse for the two of them as one of them gets corrupted. Overall, the story was actually pretty solid. It's got a little bit of a morality tale about getting over the past and facing your demons. The art is okay. I don't like the way the artist draws people's eyes. They have the big boogly eyes from manga, and it really looks very bizarre to me. If you like manga, you'll probably like it. It's kind of a pseudo manga style. Aside from the faces, though, the art is pretty good. I just don't think the artist has a really good grasp on proportionality because there are times when Zatanna's mouth is half the size of her head and it doesn't look very good. But that is a stylistic choice. I just hate it. So I'd give the art like a C- if I had to rate it somehow. But it did have some really good effects. There were some good perspective shots. We got these really cool overheads and angled scenes. So the artist has talent. It's just not a style I particularly love. And it's really only related to the faces. So human faces are the only thing keeping me from really liking this art overall. But it was an entertaining story. I got the cardstock cover because it was the only copy left. So I got stuck with the variant, which the cover's fine. I just didn't really want to pay an extra $1 for it. But I wouldn't have felt cheated for my $4. Most of these books are $5 anyway, and they've been fairly mediocre. This one was actually pretty entertaining, and I didn't hate it. I just didn't like the boogly eyes and the creepy giant ability to drop her jaw like a reptile on one of the heroes. That was kind of weird, but pretty decent story, and I am looking looking forward to reading part 2. So I will recommend this one. I thought this was pretty interesting. So far, you don't really have to buy these in order to appreciate the Night Terrors story. They're just kind of offshoot one-offs with little side adventures for the characters to do something in between the Night Terrors regular issues. But this one does kind of relate because these two are in the waking world. We actually have Robot Man and Zatanna in the waking world instead of in the dream world. And that was a nice twist. Plus, it's a much better story than a lot of them were. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Night Terrors Catwoman Issue 1. This is a two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023 that ties into the Night Terrors mini-series. This was written by Teenie Howard, art by Leila Lees, colors by Marissa Louise, Becca Carey on letters. I have cover A by Leila Lees and Veronica Gandini. Assistant editor was Jessica Burby, editor Jessica Chen, Ben Abernathy group editor. So they don't really tell you Catwoman's in a dream unless you read the little text box at the top that is in all of these. Kind of the same thing about the Nightmare Wave, but it's kind of easy to miss that or skip it. So Catwoman is going after some guy with clown type makeup, and she's interrupted by Sister Zero, who turns out to be a nun that's actually her real sister, and has a flail with an incense burner on it. Get it? Because she's a nun? Get it? It's funny. Haha. Yeah, funny. So Catwoman goes and helps her feed the homeless for some reason, even though her sister's a vigilante too, and lectures her about being a bad girl and all this. And then they go out together to find this mysterious character that Catwoman claims is known as the Joker, but nobody else seems to know who that is. And they encounter his gang. We get kind of glimpses of the Joker, but his face is always in shadows. And just when her sister's about to be gunned down, Batman shows up, but he's kind of new at this too, and he gets bit by a snake because apparently his boots aren't snake-proof. I guess his cape is made of Kevlar, but he can't get good boots. Okay, whatever. Well, they take Bruce back to Selina's place and they smooch, and Batman has a really stupid hairdo, and then Maggie interrupts and is like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna stop doing this vigilante thing. It turns out it's kind of dangerous. It was a very hyper simplistic story that didn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, they reference Selina having been a crime lord at some point, but they don't really reference anything like this is the dream of guilt that she's taking on from this storyline here or anything like that. They just sort of throw that out there and expect you to know what they're talking about. And Sister Zero, not knowing that she could get shot while being a vigilante with her weird incense flail, is really dumb. Really dumb. And Batman, not ever having used the name Batman, but dressing like a giant bat with a big bat symbol, that was really stupid. Like, I've never told anyone that name before. Are you kidding me? What kind of stupid dream is this? So I thought the story was pretty ludicrous throughout most of it. The art's not too bad. It's not really a style I prefer, but it's not bad for what it is. Some of the colors really don't match up too well, and I think they went a little heavy on the inking, but overall, it was okay art. I didn't really have a problem with it, except for the scenes with Batman without his costume on. He looks really, really weird, and that is one of the main problems with this book, is that people out of costume, their faces tend to look kind of bizarre, and a little bit abstract at times. So, not a total mixed bag, but not the worst I've ever seen. I would say the artist really needs to work on fight sequences and how to draw human hair. Beyond that, the art is okay. The cover is really good if you're into weird bondage stuff, because this scene doesn't happen in there. There's a scene with some snakes, because like I said, Batman gets bitten by a snake, but that's kind of a minor point in the story, and this is just some weird fetish stuff on the cover here. It's well done, it's just kind of an odd cover choice. I would say if you're going to pick this up, try and get it for $1 or $2. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terror's Nightwing, Issue 1. This is a two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023 and is a loose tie-in to the Night Terror's miniseries. This is written by Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad, art by Danielle D. Nicolo, Adriano Lucas on colors, Wes Abbott letterer, Danielle D. Nicolo did the cover, Jessica Burberry assistant editor, Jessica Chen editor, Ben Abernathy group editor. I don't like the cover, it's boring. That barely even looks like Nightwing. If he didn't have the costume on, I wouldn't know who this was. It looks like the guy from One Piece. Put a straw hat on him and tell me I'm wrong. So Nightwing wakes up at Arkham Asylum, where the guards are all pigs. Get it? Literally have pig faces. And the inmates are all congratulating him on something he can't remember. And then he tries to escape, and then he has a flashback and sees that he beat somebody to death, and we only find out later who it is. Turns out those animal faces are masks, and somebody's been torturing him. And behind two of the masks, some of the doctors turn out to be his dead parents, and that's when he starts pushing back, and we learn Insomnia is in fact the warden. And the person that Nightwing is said to have killed is pretty disturbing. Well, he figures out that he is in a dream, but it doesn't matter for some reason. Overall, the plot's a little bit convoluted at times, but it's okay. The dialogue's a bit rough, and the art is absolutely atrocious. It's very, very manga inspired, and I hate it. It's disproportionate, the faces are over exaggerated, the eyes especially. I just don't like this art style at all. But if you like manga, maybe you'll like it more than I did. I just found it to be very aggravating and over the top, and Nightwing's chin varies by image. It's really annoying. So like a lot of the others from the Night Terrors storyline, this is a take it or leave it issue. It's not pivotal to the Night Terrors main mini-series, and it's okay. I wouldn't pay $5 for it though. It's definitely not worth that. Try and pick it up for $1 or $2. Beyond that, not really worth it, especially with the art being so bad. Honestly, I really feel like I wasted $5. We'll see if issue 2's any better, because I already ordered it. So hopefully there's some improvement there, but I just cannot stand this art style. It really detracts from the story they're trying to tell, which is okay. It's mediocre. So that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description for various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Night Terror's Punchline, Issue 1. This is a two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023 and ties into the Night Terror's miniseries, allegedly. This issue is written by Danny Lore, art by Lucas Myers, colors by Alex Gamarez, Steve Wands did the letters, editor was Ben Abernathy. Now, I've made no secret that I hate the character Punchline. I think it's a ridiculous knockoff Harley Quinn, kind of lazy, but it is what it is, and I thought maybe this would be a chance for the character to be redeemed. So Punchline has teamed up with the Royal Flush Gang, and they have some sleep gas that they think makes them immune to the insomnia situation that's going on. Batgirl shows up to stop them, and Punchline kills Batgirl and steals her motorcycle, and then proceeds to go to the clock tower because apparently she knows that the Bat family uses the clock tower. She quickly gains access before being attacked by an undead Batgirl who apparently is merging with the technology. This was a fast read, but it was also incredibly boring. The character is not particularly interesting. She accuses Batgirl of being snarky when she does the exact same thing. It's not terribly well written. The art's okay. It's not great, but it's not bad. It's just very middle of the road. There's one decent jump scare moment at the clock tower where the costumes seem to come alive. That was kind of neat. Otherwise, this really was very incredibly generic and forgettable, just like Punchline. So I wasn't impressed with this one. If you're gonna get it out of a dollar bin. It's definitely not worth $4. The cover's okay, but really doesn't tell you anything about the storyline. So just another miss in the Night Terrors micro-series line, and not really worth remembering or tracking down. Maybe issue 2 will pick it up, I don't know, but so far, pretty much just forgettable mediocrity. That's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Night Terrors Superman Issue 1. This is a two-part mini-series from DC Comics in 2023 that ties into the Night Terrors event. This issue was written by Joshua Williamson, art by Tom Riley, colors by Nathan Fairbairn, letters by Ariana Maher, cover art by Gleb Malenkov. Assistant editor was Jillian Grant, edited by Paul Kaminsky. Cover's okay. I'm not a giant fan of the style, but it's a well-composed image, and the skull face should have been a little more centered and more prominent because the hands just look like random thorny things. So I would have probably pulled that a little more centered, but it's not a bad cover. So Superman was on his way to Supercore when the nightmare wave hit and knocked him unconscious and he fell in the ocean. So he starts experiencing some weird nightmares where some of his deepest fears of becoming a destructor or a completely lonely individual are brought forward. Of course, he has to get saved by Supergirl because girl power or something. Overall, it was an okay issue. I can't really say much more without ruining what there is to it. It's not a very deep plot, but it is pretty decently written. It really just kind of shows Superman overcoming his fears and quickly figuring out that something's not quite right. He figures it out a lot faster than some of the others that, in fact, something weird is going on and that he is in a dream. Insomnia doesn't particularly enjoy that because he wanted him to suffer a little more, I think. But overall, I would say it was a pretty decent issue. Is it worth $5? No. This is a $2 book. I liked it, but it's not $5 good. I would have gladly have picked this up out of a back issue bin for $2 or $3 and felt perfectly comfortable paying that for it. But $5 is very excessive for what you're getting here, which are a lot of large panels and a fairly shallow story where Superman isn't even the hero in the book. Supergirl saves him at the last minute for no apparent reason. So I thought it was okay. It's just overpriced for what you're getting. I'll read part 2, but I'm not gonna pay $5 for it. So if you want to read these, a lot of them are just not worth the cover price, but they're not badly done, and this is one of them. So just save yourself a couple bucks and wait till it makes its way into the back issue bin. Or grab the trade that will inevitably collect all of these one-shots and two-parters. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors Wonder Woman Issue 1. This is a two-part story from DC Comics. It's a tie-in to the Night Terrors miniseries, written by Josie Campbell, art by Juan Ferreira, letters by Pat Brousseau. Jay Ali and June Chung did the cover. Chris Rosa was the associate editor. Brittany Holzer was the editor. Paul Kaminsky group editor. Now, I like the cover. It's got sort of this 1940s look to it. It's really cool. The gold coloring is a nice touch too, because that really makes the shadows and the sky have kind of a surreal look to it. But this scene does not play out in the book, not really. Also, this is not a Wonder Woman story, this is a Justice League Dark story, so know that going in before you spend your $5. Wonder Woman and Detective Chimp meet up with John Constantine because for some reason he needed to be instituted in the mainstream DC universe, even though he's totally antithetical and dark compared to what would be going on in the DCU. There would be absolutely no tolerance for what Constantine gets into. So I don't know why he's part of the main DCU, but anyway, he's sort of the lead wizard on this one. And they're going through this nightmare realm and attacked by various things, but Constantine uses his magic quite a bit. He eventually comes across what he thinks is Zatanna, but it doesn't really look like that's the real Zatanna. Meanwhile, Wonder Woman and Detective Chimp have to face off with their own fears, and then we're left with a cliffhanger ending. Then there's a backup story of Nubia, written by Stephanie Williams, art by Megan Hetrick, colors by Marissa Louise, letters by Becca Carey, associate editor Chris Rosa, edited by Brittany Holzer, group editor Paul Kaminsky. And Nubia is having a restless sleep with her female lover before she is dragged into a well and meets a corrupted monster that was at one point somebody that she cared about. Overall, the main story is not too bad. It's just misbilled as a Wonder Woman story when it's clearly a Justice League Dark story. And Wonder Woman isn't even the lead in here, as far as I could tell. John Constantine is, for the majority of the story. Also, I'm not a huge fan of this art style. There's times where the art is fine, but then it becomes very manga inspired, and you get weird perspective shots where people's fists look as big as their head, and you get these goofy action lines, and there's other times where it's just silly looking and rushed. There's one specific panel where Constantine and Detective Chimp are running, and the art looks like it's out of Mad Magazine. It's totally antithetical to what else you saw earlier in the book, because it's much more cartoonish and over the top. And the book continues to do that. It fluctuates between semi-okay art and weird manga art. I don't think this artist has a particular style that they've really kind of attached themselves to. It's just sort of a mess of different styles, almost like a kid's sketchbook, where someone is trying out different art styles and sort of just mashed them all together into a book. And like I said, some of the art's pretty good, but there's a lot of panels that are just really, really hit and miss, and some that are just miserably bad. The backup story, I absolutely hated the art. I didn't like the story. I don't know why Nubia is wearing a bonnet for part of this. I don't care about these characters at all. It was a very talkative story that really didn't seem to go anywhere, and was just a lot of girl power with some mandatory lesbians. That was a complete waste of time. As far as the value of this book, is it worth the $5 cover price? Absolutely not. This is at best a $1.50, $2 book. I wouldn't pay more than that for it. Grab it out of a dollar bin. If you pay more than $2 for it, you're gonna feel ripped off. The story is okay, but the art is a complete scattered mess. The backup story especially has really bad art, and the main story has at best mediocre art that I would expect to find in a Dynamite book that had low sale numbers. So I don't know what they're thinking. The cover is really, really good, and it makes you think there's gonna be good art inside, but nope. So I didn't much care for this one. I probably will read the second one just to review it and see if it's going to resolve itself well for the sake of the channel, but beyond that, I'm not going to recommend it unless you pull it out of a dollar bin. No way. Save yourself the time and money and buy something better. Go buy Conan. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Night Terrors Issue 2. This is a 4-part miniseries from DC Comics in 2023, but you'll also need to read First Blood and Night's End because you can't just have a miniseries that's actually numbered anymore. You have to have some other number one-shots there to pad the sales numbers. So this issue was written by Joshua Williamson, art by Giuseppe Comunicoli, Stefano Nisi, and Casper Weingard. Colors by Frank Martin and Casper Weingard. Letters by Troy Pateri. Covers by Ivan Reyes, Danny Miki, and Brad Anderson, and it was edited by Ben Abernathy. I really like the cover. It's really well done. It does kind of relate to what's going on, but it doesn't really have any bad guys or fighting or anything in it. Just sort of implied action. So Deadman is talking to a newly resurrected Golden Age character who is sort of a zombie, and he finds out there was an unsolved case that really haunted him, and he wants to hang around and help out. Meanwhile, there's some unnamed character that nobody knows about that is dreaming, and then he's just gonna get killed, so don't get attached. Meanwhile, things aren't looking good for the waking world. Deadman tries to infiltrate Insomnia's mind, and we get to see part of his origin, which was pretty nice, and then things go horribly, horribly wrong, and we're left with a cliffhanger ending. Overall, it's not a bad story. The art is a little bit rushed looking in this. It's very sketchy at times, and the body proportions don't always line up. It's strange because some panels look really good, others look really rushed. I don't know if that's because there were 3 artists involved in this, or if it's just that somebody got super lazy, or somebody's just a bad artist, but it's a real mixed bag as far as the art goes. And somebody is trying to be very anime with their drawings, but I guess that's the trend these days. I don't particularly care for it, but there is enough decent art in here that I didn't absolutely hate everything. And the story is pretty interesting. I would say wait and get this out of a bargain bin. It's a pretty pretty decent story, but the art is kind of a mixed bag, and there's so many ancillary books that kind of makes it difficult to justify paying full price for. I do like the Dead Man is a prominent character in the miniseries, so that's a nice touch, but I'm not convinced that it's worth hunting down every single part of this, especially when they pull the same thing they've been doing where they have these bookend pieces that aren't part of the main miniseries, but you have to read if you want to know the opening of the story and the closing of the story. It's very deceptive and a very lazy trick, so I'm very put off by that. But like I said, the story's not bad, and the art is kind of hit and miss, but it's not the worst I've seen out of DC. So I'll recommend it, but only if you can pick it up cheap. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors Action Comics Issue 1. This is a two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023 and ties into the Night Terrors mini-series event. There's actually two stories in this one, and it starts with Power Girl in She's Got No Strings, Part 1. Written by Leah Williams, art by Vasco Gregiv, colors by Alex Gamarez, letters by Becca Carey, cover art by Rafa Sandoval and Matt Herms, assistant editor Jillian Grant, edited by Brittany Holzer, group editor Paul Kaminsky. That cover has Power Girl and Cyborg Superman on it. They don't appear in the same story, so the cover's a total lie. So they're starting off with a complete deception. The story that is about Cyborg Superman is the backup story. It's technically the second story because it's the same length, and that is the Stuff of Nightmares Part 1 by Philip Kennedy Johnson with art by Miko Sayayan and Fico Ocio, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., letters by Dave Sharp, assistant editor Jillian Grant, edited by Paul Kaminsky. So the Power Girl storyline has Kara Zor-El, aka Power Girl, running away from what seems like an obsessive boyfriend who is comically evil as he tries to kick the door in. Meanwhile, her parents were trying to escape her, and she actually accidentally fractures her mother into a bunch of little pieces by touching her. Oh, and in the background we get 404 page not found error, because that would totally be in place on Krypton, where she's supposedly at right now. They use 404 errors too, you know. And then when she takes a swing at the stalker boyfriend, it turns into Superman, and then she wakes up somewhere else because everything seems to be shifting around her, and it's supposed to be dreamlike, I guess. And then her friend pushes her out on a stage where they're doing some Hamlet. Interesting footnote for the editors over at DC: when you're quoting Shakespeare in somebody's dialogue, you have to put the quotation marks so people know that you're quoting something and not original dialogue by your writers. Because if you did this with somebody else that you were quoting, you'd probably get sued. But Shakespeare's public domain, but you still have to put the quotes there to be grammatically correct. Nice work, you lazy bums. What do you people do over there? Do editors just approve everything with a rubber stamp? So lazy. And this is almost as annoying as the apostrophe S thing that drives me up a wall. And I know it's nitpicking, I don't really care. So then Streaky the cat puts a giant hole in her friend's chest, and I don't know, then her friend goes super evil for some reason, and we keep getting these like programming error things throughout, and I don't know what it's supposed to be, some sort of pseudo matrix thing. It's kind of lazy. Story was incredibly stupid and boring, and the art is atrociously pseudo manga. I absolutely detested the art. It looks silly at times, the proportionality is off, Kara's hips continually change shape and size, and close-ups of her face look really weird. The artist needs to learn how to draw mouths too. That seems to be a very serious problem over in comics these days. I was bored with that story. So incredibly bored, and I hated the art so much. There were panels that were really good individually, and then it turns back into the pseudo manga crap, and it's just lazy. The Stuff of Nightmares by Philip Kennedy Johnson is better written, and the art is significantly better. This should have been the story in the front. In this one, Connor Kent, discount knockoff Asian Superman, and girl girl Steele are babysitting two kids. I don't know who they are. Don't really care. It never tells you. There's no reference point. We get a reference to their names. But if you're just jumping in with this book, you're going to have no idea who these kids are. Well, Cyborg Superman is supposed to be in the Phantom Zone, but this kid's having a nightmare, and somehow Henshaw can take over Superman's little robot friend, which then gets control of Connor's body and starts crawling around trying to take everyone over. It's obviously a nightmare, but they don't really seem to know that, except for Agent Superman, who immediately figures that one out. Nailed it in one. And it doesn't look like it's going to go well. Also, the dog's probably infected. That story was just okay. Overall, though, the mediocrity of the second story can't salvage the garbageness of the first story, and I'm not sure why Doc Ock's tentacles are coming out of an oven when Henshaw takes over, but those are Doc Ock's tentacles from Spider-Man 2. And I'm pretty sure that whatever came out of the freezer is a replicator from Stargate SG-1. So not a lot of originality in this issue. But the stories are completely divergent. One is silly and simplistic. The other one is a bit more horror-oriented with way better art. If you're going to buy this, don't pay anywhere near $5 for it. Get it out of the dollar bin because it's not worth more than that. The entertainment value of the second story is minimal at best, and its usefulness to the overall Nightmare story is almost non-existent, and it's minimized by the crappiness of the strangely manga first story. I did not care for this. This is a waste of $5. So another forgettable Night Terrors tie-in that you don't really need to read because it really doesn't tie into anything. It's just a random horror stories with superheroes. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors Angel Breaker Issue 1. This is a two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023, and it ties in loosely to the Night Terrors miniseries. This issue was written by Tim Seeley, art by Aki Bright, colors by Brian Reber, letters by Sadia Timofuante, main cover by Matteo Loli and Tony Avnia, edited by Ben Abernathy. So this woman who has a sword named Angel Breaker, she's totally not a knockoff of Elric with Stormbringer. No, don't think that. Stop it. She finds this guy named Raptor, who's apparently a criminal with very generic costume, and recruits him to help her go to the US to recover some backup data from the cult of Cobra. Apparently it's about the Dreamstone, and she wants some information off there. And they have a buddy team up because they're instantly friends, even though this guy says he hates her, and he doesn't murder her while she sleeps, and she purrs, because that's funny. Ha ha ha. Meanwhile, in Erie County, Ohio, the secret Cobra facility has these 4 super smart kids that are following their boss lady around as she goes to this locked door and does something, and it's wacky, because they're kids, right? They're supposed to be like these super special kids that are going to help Cobra in the future or something. Well, Angel Breaker and Raptor drop in to beat up some Blackadders, and of course we have social commentary because Angel Breaker refers to them as members of an elitist organization that exploits the poor for power. So there's that, just wedged right in there. There's a couple little comments like that throughout the book. Because there's so much talking, I guess they had to fill space with some mandatory political talking points. Well, it turns out the lady in the vault is trying to get information from the Dreamstone memory banks or whatever. Meanwhile, Raptor and Angel Breaker catch up with the kids, and they're suddenly fast friends, of course. And it turns out one of them's working for somebody else, and then a plane hits the building, because why not? And apparently something came out of Angel Breaker's nightmares when the nightmare wave hit, because none of these people fell asleep for some reason. So this nightmare creature is loose, and then we got a cliffhanger ending. This was horrifically bad writing. This was generic, nonsensical talkiness that read like bad manga. And the art style is very much bad manga, mixed in with a little bit of Steven universe. I hated everything about this book. This was a giant waste of money. It has all the flaws of manga art, from the generic faces and ludicrously over-the-top emotional reactions and little sweat beads people get when they're moderately stressed, to the weird way people talk as if this was translated from another language by college freshmen. I seriously thought I'd accidentally purchased a manga that was in color, but one that was off a discount rack. Everything about this failed. It's not scary, it's not interesting, it barely ties into Night Terrors. This Angel Breaker character is really annoying. Everybody talks like they're on Twitter. Seriously, DC, I don't know what you're doing over there, but do your own art. Don't try and make lazy copies of bad manga art. You're not good at it. And the storyline is laughably simplistic and bad. Everything about this book fails. The artist does have a pretty good handle on being able to not just make flat panels though, so there is actually some perspective shots. Beyond that though, this book was trash. I hated it. This was a waste of $4. Unless somebody gives this to you for free, it's not worth tracking down. So I have no interest in pursuing this, even though I already bought issue 2. This was total hot mess. It's not worth dollar bin. It's not worth owning. I am very, very upset that I spent money on this. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video about Girl Elric, please hit the like button, share it on your social media, and subscribe if you haven't. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description for various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Night Terrors Detective Comics Issue 1. This is a two-part micro-series from DC Comics that ties into the Night Terrors storyline. This issue is written by Dan Waters, art and cover by Riccardo Federici, Brad Anderson on colors, letters by Steve Wands, Senior Associate Editor Ariana Totoro, edited by Jessica Chen, Ben Abernathy Group Editor. So we waste some time watching Gordon do some self-pitying over his son's grave, even though his son is apparently back from the dead. Then he hangs out with Sorrow for a little while before Sorrow takes off in hunt for something that's going on. He knows something is being summoned. We get a brief glimpse of Insomnia, but he really seems to have no part in this entire adventure at all. This doesn't even seem to be related in any way to the Night Terror storyline. What Gordon ends up finding is 3 people in eyeball masks at some freaky clock thing, and they keep referring to themselves as the good people of Gotham, and they summon these Clive Barker knockoff Cenobites that they ask for powers, and one wants knowledge, another one wants strength, and the third one wants wealth. Of course, this is a monkey's paw, so while they are given what they wanted, it's not exactly the way they wanted it. Sorrow appears to be liquidated, and Gordon gets injured. He also appears to have been bestowed with a gift of sorts that these weird multi-dimensional creatures give him, even though he didn't ask for it. He just happened to be there, and it makes him start to shatter like a porcelain doll. There are some very gruesome scenes in this that are definitely mature, some very adult themes, not just the shattering of Gordon's body, but also the deaths of several people. Now he figures out that the one guy's this sort of freakish looking Batman type creature, and another one is this lady that spits up gems. It's a very surreal kind of story, and it definitely has inspirations from like Clive Barker and maybe some Lovecraft in there. It was an interesting comic, but it probably should have been its own thing and not really tied to the Batman universe, because it doesn't seem to really make any sense with the Night Terror storyline or the Batman mythology. I am a little behind on Detective Comics, but this alien horror thing would have been better as its own miniseries with a generic retired police officer, not Commissioner Gordon. I think that would have actually been more interesting, because Gordon brings a lot of lore baggage with him that another retired cop generically would not outside of the DCU. This probably would have been an interesting series from like Scout Comics or Titan, but it really doesn't seem to fit in with anything at DC. I don't really think it has anything to do with the Insomnia story. I don't know what they were doing with that, but Insomnia is in 2 big pages where it's 1 or 2 panels each, and that's it. He's quite literally only in the book for about 2 panels. I'm not real sure what this is supposed to be, but it's not a Batman story. It's barely a Commissioner Gordon story, but the premise is interesting. It just doesn't really seem to be something that should fit in here. I would say if you're going to check this out, get it for about $3 or $4. Don't pay the $5 cover price for it. It's definitely not worth that. The art's not bad and the story's okay. If you've seen enough horror material over the years, you've probably seen this sort of thing before, so it's not that interesting. But if you're new to horror comics or horror genre in general and haven't seen a lot of Clive Barker type stuff, this might be more appealing to you. So I would recommend it if you're into horror comics, but if you're looking for some superhero action, this is not that. And there's a lot of wasted space in here. Large panels, some single page panels that really are wasted. The entire thing at the beginning with him pining over his supposedly dead son's grave was completely ancillary and unnecessary to what the plot appears to be, and could have been summed up in a couple caption boxes. But they're going for this cinematic flair where they're basically just creating a storyboard instead of telling a comic book adventure. So I didn't much care for that, and it could have been cut out and shortened entirely and probably would have made the story much more concise. So not worth the $5, no matter how cool the cover is from a Lovecraftian standpoint or how interesting the horror elements are. They just don't fit in with the Night Terrors story at all. And it doesn't seem to be a Batman or Gotham story. It's just sort of this weird horror thing that exists on its own. And I don't really care about that character Sorrow at all. It's kind of an annoying character. So that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors Harley Quinn Issue 1. This is a two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023 that ties into the Night Terrors storyline, allegedly. This issue was written by Tini Howard, art by Hayden Sherman, Triona Farrell did the colors, Steve Wands on letters, cover by Hayden Sherman, assistant editor was Jessica Burby, edited by Ariana Turturro, with group editor Ben Abernathy. There's also a Harley Quinn backup story, which is by Leah Williams, art and colors by Ben Templesmith, letters by Hassan Atsmain Allahu, assistant editor Jessica Burby, edited by Ariana Turturro, Ben Abernathy group editor. So the main story has Harley Quinn immediately figuring out that she is in a dream. Also, she has no pants on when she's walking around as a doctor. Yep, that's funny, I guess. Haha, it's funny, right? No pants because you're having a dream or a nightmare? Yeah. Since she immediately figured it out, it turns out this is a computer simulation, because we didn't get enough of that in the Punchline one. No, this is a computer that's testing her out because she's super smarts and she's gonna help it fix the multiverse or something. So she looks at this handbook, decides to jump through into parallel universes, which are apparently just computer simulations of the 52 universes, and she faces off with Admiral L, and it's super exciting. So she runs into the Justice League there, and she pops back out into the simulation and says, well, I want to be a good guy. So she jumps into one where all the superheroes are vampires, and they of course demand that she help them. They ask for mercy because she's so awesome, and it turns out that her nightmare is the Justice League. Oh no. Then we get the backup story where Harley Quinn is talking to a video camera and then a future version of herself, and it's very, very convoluted. Both of these stories were incredibly boring. The computer simulation one was just stupid. It at least had an idea that was kind of okay, but we've seen it done so much by these writers that don't really understand computers, trying to write stories about computers, and it just kind of fell flat. The art's very, very amateurish and over the top. Everybody has the overreactions that you see in really lazy mangas, and the proportions are weird sometimes, so people's heads don't look like they are proportionate to the body, and it makes it look like the artist is garbage. This artist has talent and can draw, but they keep going for these over-the-top manga expressions that I think hurts their art. So if they weren't trying to simulate manga, they would probably be a better artist. But because they're trying too hard to create this hybrid style, it really does fall flat, and I don't think it works, especially because faces are weird looking and the heads are disproportionate. The backup story was incredibly pointless and boring, and the art style does not work for for superheroes. I've seen Ben Temple-Smith's art before. It's not my favorite. It's too stylistic. It worked okay on Fishkill, but in this superhero story, it just doesn't work. Even with something as ludicrous as Harley Quinn in a nightmare scenario, it just doesn't work at all. It's way too stylized, and the proportions are horribly incorrect more often than not. Again, with the big boogly heads that don't make any sense. This was a big fail for me. I'm not a huge Harley Quinn fan to begin with, but the character just comes off as obnoxious and smug. She's too good at everything, and it goes beyond being a Mary Sue to absurd lengths where it's just, she's basically omniscient, and the jokes aren't funny, the situations aren't funny. They're trying to interject humor when it's not humor, it's just lazy observations. So I thought it was poorly written trash with some mediocre to terrible art, and the only really redeeming part of this book was the cover was pretty interesting in a way, because it is much more of a horror theme than a regular superhero book, but even that is just largely a pinup. So the cover was the best art in the book. The main story artist has potential, but really needs to work on making the anatomy fit and stop trying to create a hybrid art style. And the backup story just made no sense, and the art didn't fit the story at all. So I don't know what this was supposed to be, but I was not impressed with it, and I hated every minute of it. So I'm not going to recommend this book. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors Titans Issue 1. This is a two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023, and it ties into the Night Terrors storyline mini-series event. This issue was written by Andrew Constant, art by Scott Godlewski, Ryan Cody on colors, Wes Abbott on letters, cover by Yannick Paquette and Nathan Fairbairn, Chris Rosa, associate editor, Brittany Holzer, editor, Paul Kaminsky, group editor. Cover's pretty good, and it does relate to what's going on in the book, although it does spoil the ending of the issue, so on that front it's pretty weak. So we have this woman who is trying to break out of what appears to be a muck-filled floor and being chased by zombies, and a voice in her head is guiding her through this building, and one by one she starts to find the other Titans, and she has to show them that they are not what their nightmare insecurities seem to say they are. We don't find out who this woman is in this issue. I thought it was Donna Troy at first, but it's not. Not shown as Nightwing, so maybe it's supposed to be Nightwing's feminine side or something. I don't know. But overall, it was a pretty decent story. I was a little confused at who the unnamed character is and what their primary motivation was. The art's not bad. It's overall pretty decent, but the premise is a bit thin, but it's pretty well told, and it's got some good imagery in it that I didn't hate. So as far as the Night Terrors stuff goes, this one isn't too bad. It's still not a $5 book. If you're paying anywhere near $5 for this, you're going to feel ripped off. But I would say it's a solid $2 to $3 book. It's one of the more interesting ones, and it's one of the better written of the Night Terror stuff so far. It's still not the greatest thing. I'm not a huge Titans fan though, so maybe it'll appeal more to hardcore Teen Titans people, but I didn't hate it, didn't love it. I just thought it was moderately entertaining, so I'd say if you could find it for about half cover price or a little bit more, you'll probably be pretty comfortable with it as far as the story goes. We'll see how it wraps up in part 2, but so far I was actually reasonably impressed because so many of the others are just garbage or just not worth the time or forgettable, etc. But decent art with an okay story and a really cool cover. So that's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Night Terrors Batman Issue 2. This is a two-part miniseries that ties into the Night Terrors miniseries from 2023, and this is written by Joshua Williamson, art by Gilliam March, colors by Tomeu Mori, letters by Troy Pateri, cover by Gilliam March and Tomeu Mori, edited by Ben Abernathy. So Batman's dealing with his nightmares, and he quickly figures out a way to cope with that as he tries to get Deadman out of his brain. Well, he goes to a locked door in his mind, which a little on the nose there sits on top of a brain. I guess they needed to overemphasize that point. And Insomnia shows up and Batman gets a slightly darker costume for some reason to look more menacing, I guess. And he faces off with the gun bat thing and then talks to himself for a moment, which is kind of touching. And finally, the plot progresses. Now, this story takes place between Night Terrors issue 2 and 3, and that's important in the reading order if you're trying to read the Night Terrors storyline without spoilers, that sort of thing. So this will make much more sense if you read it between issues 2 and 3 of Night Terrors. There is a backup story, this time of Speedy, aka Arsenal, and this is written by Joshua Williamson with art by Trevor Hairsine, colors by Antonio Fabella, letters by Troy Pateri, edited by Ben Abernathy. Now all of Arsenal's arrows miss. Black Canary was with him in the waking world, and she is having nightmares about not being able to scream and her mouth disappearing in some Nightmare on Elm Street looking event. But it's mostly about Arsenal and his generalized fears, and a crocodile is creeping up on him, and oh my god, it's scary. But this one just sort of is an allusion to Night's Terror, Night's End, which is not part of the main miniseries, but still really, really important to it. I don't know, they just like to do these stupid end cap books, Omegas and Ends and all that, on top of the mini-series, so they can sell you an extra book that you have to buy because you were tricked into it by not getting the actual mini-series when they tell you it's a mini-series. Anyway, it was a pointless backup story. It was okay for what it was. It was just completely pointless and had nothing to do with anything, and as far as I could tell, these two characters have nothing to do with Night's Terror. And the art was okay on the backup story. The main book, the art was really solid. I didn't have a problem with that. There were a few panels that kind of annoyed me, but minor complaints. Overall, pretty solid, but the book is completely unnecessary and very average. It's not a masterpiece in the making, and it is definitely not worth $5. If you want to read this, grab it for $1 or $2 out of the back issue bins, but it's really not important to the Night Terror story other than to find out how Batman is dealing with the nightmare situation and whether or not he's going to wake up in time for issues 3 and 4. There's some decent storyline points, but it's not anything that you gotta run out and buy to add to Night's Terror, and it's really just not that compelling or all that new of storytelling. It's just a interesting little side quest in the overarching plot of Night's Terror. I don't feel bad for reading it. I didn't feel like I wasted my time. It's just not that critical to the main storyline. So don't pay more than a couple bucks for it. It's not worth $5. It's not that interesting or compelling, and the backup story is a complete freaking waste of time. But it was better than issue 1. The cover is really cool, at least, so I mean, I'll give them credit for that, but it's just not enough to make it worth $5. That's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors Black Adam issue 2. This is the second part of a two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023, which is also a tie-in to the Night Terrors mini-series. This issue was written and illustrated by Jeremy Hahn, colors by Nick Filardi and Rex Locus, letters by Troy Pateri, cover by Hahn and Filardi, edited by Ben Abernathy. The cover does relate to what's going on in the book, but it's just an okay cover. It's at least dynamic and has a bad guy on it that makes makes it look action-packed. So Batman, via Deadman, makes a brief encounter with Black Adam, and apparently Black Adam is kind of straddling the line between sleeping and awake, so he's able to actually encounter them briefly, and he gets kind of filled in, but he doesn't really listen. And then he goes to see people's souls being weighed as their hearts are placed on a scale to see if they are found wanting, and he tries to fight back. Things go kind of askew, and he sees the wizard briefly, but not everything is as it seems. While he's put in shackles again as a slave like he once was, that appears to be his nightmare. He tries to fight back against this creature and ends up maybe accidentally bringing it to the real world. So it's a pretty nightmarish creature, and unfortunately the cover kind of reveals that. This wouldn't have been seen by the reader until the very end of the book otherwise. I think this kind of stunt is a bad mistake because you're ruining the end of the story for the readers, and that's kind of annoying. As a person buying the book, I don't want the very last pages screwed up for me and revealed. It's sort of like getting spoilers ahead of time for a movie you want to go watch. It's very rude. So I think they could have handled that a little better, but the monsters look really cool in here. Unfortunately, the art does suffer from a lot of the same problems that we saw last issue, where the head doesn't quite match up with the body when they're leaning forward, and same perspective issues with arms. And while I thought the story was okay, the art was a kind of a mixed bag. I think the artist still has a way to go. It just doesn't look very professional for one of the big two. It looks more like a Dynamite book, and the artist really needs to work on those perspective shots with people. So overall, I would say it's not worth the $5, but if you pick it up for $1 or $2, it's probably fine. It does lead into Night's End, so there isn't a real resolution here. You've just got to lead into yet another story. But it's not the worst of these that I've been reading, so I would say it's worth a read if you can find it super cheap. Beyond that, I would pass. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terror's Poison Ivy Issue 2. This is a two-part micro series from DC Comics in 2023 and ties into the Night Terror's event. This issue was written by G. Willow Wilson with pencils by Adigun Ilhan, inks by Mark Morales, colors by Reef Rianto, letters by Hassan Atsmain Allahu, cover by Jessica Fong. Assistant editor was Jessica Burby, edited by Ariana Totoro. Ben Abernathy, group editor. So Poison Ivy is under the influence of Harley Quinn and trying to pretend everything is normal. Unfortunately, when Harley tries to destroy weed, Pamela starts to figure out that something's not right. And Janet from HR tries to escape from some of the sinister beings that are part of Pamela's nightmare, and they try and hunt her down. She ends up finding Pamela, and they start to do some pushback, and Pamela realizes that this is her nightmare, and we get some resolution. Overall, the story is mediocre. Monsters look pretty creepy overall, but at the same time, there is a moment when Pamela is supposed to be coming out of their control, but she still has that same weird eyes that the bad guys do. So it's hard to tell what's supposed to look Uncanny Valley and what's supposed to look normal. The dialogue is pretty weak. It's supposed to be, I guess, kind of cutesy, but it's not really that horrifying. I think the imagery is way more sinister than the dialogue, which really doesn't help things, and the way things are resolved is kind of stupid. So overall, is this worth $5? Absolutely not. Don't pay anywhere near that. If you want to read these, pull them out of a dollar bin. This story should have been about Janet from HR, not Poison Ivy. The first issue really proves that. In this one, Pamela gets a little more involved, but not much, and it ends up being a little bit rushed. There's too much build-up and not enough middle story, and it's resolved in a kind of ham-fisted way. So I don't think the editorial team really kind of pushed the writer to make this a more interesting story than it ended up being. So that's why I'm saying get it out of the bargain bin. Beyond that, it was forgettable mediocrity with some kind of creepy imagery. The art is okay, but I suspect the artist's normal style is not something I'm going to enjoy because they seem to have difficulty separating the dream characters from the regular non-affected characters, and that tends to make me think that their art style just is normally this surreal. And the cover really didn't do anything for me. I think it's a little too try-hard, and the colors are very flat. They're trying to be shocking, and it just comes off as kind of a mess because you don't know where your eye is supposed to be looking because there's nothing really standing out. It just sort of blurs together in a potpourri of boring. It's like a nightmarish tablecloth. That's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terror's Ravager issue 2. This is a two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023 that ties into the Night Terrors event. This issue was written by Ed Brisson with art by Dexter Soy, colors by Veronica Candini, letters by Troy Pateri, Ben Abernathy editor. The cover was by Jeff Spokes. And while that's an okay pinup, it tells me nothing about the book and I was bored with it, and all that white is going to end up getting easily soiled, so I was really kind of annoyed with the cover. So we've got this zombie version of Rose hunting regular Rose, and monsters appearing and chasing her down, and etc. And she of course has to fight the various monsters. Meanwhile, Stormwatch is trying to figure out how to wake her up, and she comes across what is supposed to be, I guess, Deathstroke, who has like roots out of his eyes or something. I thought that was supposed to be like an energy trail or something, but no, he has these weird googly eyes for some reason. And we do get a resolution, and they sort of allude to the possibility of Deathstroke coming back, which is kind of a lame way to do it. But overall, the story was pretty interesting. She's sort of fighting the legacy of her father, metaphorically, and in a dream scenario. I didn't really see Insomnia in this, so I don't really understand how this ties into Night Terrors, if at all. Yeah, she's asleep, but it's the loosest of connections. But the art was pretty solid in this one. I was really impressed. There's some really good panels in here, and some pretty decent fight sequences. I actually like this issue better than the first one, and it's only $4. I thought this was probably one of the best out of the Night Terrors miniseries to come out. So if you're looking for an interesting story with some actual character development, this was pretty good. I'm generally not a huge fan of Ed Brisson. I find him incredibly hit and miss, but this was a pretty good story. I think it's a really lame way to bring Deathstroke back, but it was still a pretty good introspective story about somebody trying to cope with their personal demons and the legacy of their father. So I like that. I think the cover does not sell it. It really undersells what is in the book, and that's a mistake. I think they should have got the interior artist to do the cover, though. I think that would have been a better move because they're already working on the story and they could come up with something other than just kind of a lazy pinup, because the interior artist definitely has a really good grasp on perspective shots and the character, and it would match up more with the style of art. So definitely recommend. I was really surprised by this. I didn't think I'd like this. I'm not really big on Deathstroke characters, and I'm not even that familiar with Ravager, but this was a shockingly good two-parter. So high recommendation on these two. But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors The Joker issue 2. This is the final part of the two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023, which is part of the Night Terrors event storyline. This issue was written by Matthew Rosenberg, art and cover by Stefano Raffaelli, Romulo Fajardo Jr. on colors, Tom Napolitano letters, edited by Ben Abernathy. So it would appear that Batman is still active in Joker's nightmares, but it's him wearing the Bat costume. And we've advanced in time somehow, probably because it's a dream, to where Joker has a kid and a wife, and he sometimes calls the kid Gaggy, which is pretty funny because the kid's name is Albert. And some of the other villains try and get jobs with him at Wayne Enterprises, and he tries to pretend he doesn't know what they're talking about. And of course Batman's corpse is still in the closet, but realizing that there is a need for Batman, the Joker seems to be developing an alternate personality where he goes out and fights crime violently. Because this is the Joker, he continues to live in this sort of deluded world where he can just murder people and no one seems to pay any attention to that. And he gets invited to Wayne Manor for dinner with his boss, Bruce Wayne. And Bruce Wayne can't remember the name of his own butler, which is Winchester, but he calls him all sorts of different names. It's actually pretty funny. And Bruce eats like a pig on shellfish, even though Joker said he was allergic to it earlier. I thought that was kind of a funny gag. But it really seems to be that Joker is trying to come to terms with the fact that his life is not that interesting without Batman, and he would just end up being boring. And how it finishes up is effectively how you would expect something from the Joker to end up. It makes no sense and it's a bit ludicrous. So I didn't hate this. I thought it was actually interesting concept. This issue is definitely better than the first issue, and it made the other one look better. The art's okay. Didn't have a problem with that. It's just a bit middle of the road. I don't feel like it was worth $5. The cover's pretty interesting. It looks a little bit like Holy Terror Batman on the cover, but it does relate to what's going on in the book. And there were a couple of actually funny bits in here. So I would have to say that this issue was better than the first one and salvages it a little bit more. So if you can find it for about half cover price, I'd recommend it. It's a little better than mediocre, but not the greatest one of the Night Terror stuff. It's just definitely not the worst. Kind of hard to classify it. So it's definitely higher than the Angel Breaker ones, but it's not worth hunting down and trying to add it to your collection unless you're a massive Joker fan. I still think the John Carpenter single issue was way better, but this was not bad. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors issue 3. This is allegedly a 4-part miniseries, but there is a bookend on each side, so it's actually a 6-part miniseries with a whole bunch of ancillary books that, as a general rule, have nothing to do with the main story and no impact on it at all. This issue was written by Joshua Williamson, art by Giuseppe Camuncoli, Stefano Nisi, and Casper Weingard. Colors by Frank Martin and Casper Weingard, letters by Troy Pateri. I have the main cover, which is by Ivan Reyes, Danny Miki, and Brad Anderson, and the book was edited by Ben Abernathy. The cover's a little busy. It's a little too convoluted. Batman should probably be a little bit more prominent or centered because there's really no focus for your eye except that sword, and that just leads you to this red blurry mess thing, which leads down to another bad guy and right past Batman. So I don't like the cover. It really wouldn't have sold me on the book, which I already was buying it, but as an independent issue, it makes no sense on its own. So Sandman and Batman are facing off with these monsters, and Damian shows up to save them because he's turning into a Gary Sue pretty quickly, more than usual, and they manage to escape. Robin, of course, figures out immediately that Batman is possessed by Deadman, which he thinks is a demon, and he can see Deadman for some reason because he's seen a lot of death. So a little bit more Gary Sue action going on there. And while they're on the Batplane, Deadman decides to take a little walk through Insomnia's mind, and we get to see a therapy meeting where Insomnia drinks some coffee before stabbing somebody to death, cutting his eyelids off. It was very exciting. Then they figure out a way to enter this halfway space called the Hollow, which is between waking and dreaming and death, and Sandman has to defend the two of them while they're in this zone. They call it the reality stream, is an alternate name for it, and that looks pretty interesting. And we end up with Boston having to face his nightmares, and we get a twist ending. Overall, the art is a bit of a mixed bag. The scenes where Boston is in Insomnia's mind, I think, is far inferior art. The perspective of the body proportions don't really line up sometimes, and it's a much sketchier style that I don't think really works with the rest of the art. Once again, the artist doesn't know how to do mouths, so people appear not to have any lips at all. It's really weird. But some of the art is pretty good. It's just a bit of a mixed bag. The story's fine. I think there's a little bit they could have cut out, like the first page intros they do in each issue, where you just have Deadman breaking the fourth wall and talking to the audience, are really obnoxious and unnecessary. They don't add anything to it. It's just space filler. It could easily have been cut out. But overall, I did enjoy the story. I think there were just a few things the editor probably should have said, no, we don't need that, and tighten the story up a little bit to make it a bit more concise and focus more on the action. And I think that would have moved the plot a little faster. But a pretty decent issue. So far, I don't hate this miniseries. It's not the greatest thing I've ever read. I am glad to see Deadman is a big part of it, and they have the Sandman in there, so that was kind of neat. And there were some good story elements. I'm a little annoyed that Damian Wayne is such an important part of this, because he just seems to be a little bit of an overpowered mess. But I will recommend it. Maybe not for full price, but if you can find it at a reasonable price, I would say $2-3, probably a good price for it. I don't think this is going to become very sought after in the future unless there's some big event in the final issue. So I don't think it's going to get to be something that's a very expensive issue. So worth a read, but not going to blow you away, and definitely not worth tracking down. If you come across it in a bargain bin, then snatch it up. That'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Night Terror's Green Lantern Issue 2. This is a two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023 that ties into the Night Terror's mini-series event. And this book features two stories. You've got the main story with Hal Jordan, and you've got the backup with Sinestro. The main story was written by Jeremy Adams, art by Eduardo Pesica, Jordi Tarragona, and Julio Ferreira, colors by Luis Guerrero, letters by Dave Sharp. Assistant editor Jillian Grant, edited by Paul Kaminsky. And the backup, Sinestro's story, was written by Alex Segura, art by Mario Facalio, colors by Prasad Prasao Rao Pressy, letters by Dave Sharp, assistant editor Jillian Grant, edited by Paul Kaminsky. So Parallax is after Hal Jordan, but Hal's not putting up with this nonsense anymore. He knows something's not quite right and these aren't the real people, and he's had about enough. So he does exactly what Hal Jordan would do and pushes back. And he begins to chase the nightmare creatures around because they're not about to escape him. He even quotes the oath and says, "Guess he hasn't heard about the 'no evil shall escape my sight' thing." And he proceeds to taunt the nightmare creature mercilessly because the things that were presented to him were not nightmares as Hal Jordan saw them. They were choices and times in his life when he had to make pivotal decisions. Remember, Hal Jordan is largely a man without fear, so he actually goes on the offensive, which is probably the first one of these books where I've seen them actually turn the tables on the nightmare, not be led by the nightmare. And it was actually really, really compelling and interesting. And it was a fun book. There was a lot of action and adventure, and Hal Jordan being a hero. He even does some Army of Darkness stuff, so if you haven't seen Army of Darkness, there's definitely an homage to it in here with the chainsaw and the gun. So it's good to know that Hal Jordan has good movie taste, I guess. The Sinestro story was a whole different ballgame. Sinestro is attacked by these two variations of himself, and they sort of argue with each other more than anything. And it's really just setting up the return of Sinestro. It really doesn't even seem like he's in a nightmare. It just seems like he's having some self-doubt, and he's just manifesting some inner conflict he's having. I thought that was actually really boring. The art is definitely weaker than the main story, which the main story had some really, really great panels. Great perspective shots, and some really comically fun situations. But there was a lot of really good, professionally looking panels in this book, and I thought that the art was absolutely a step up. The cover's fantastic. That is an awesome cover, but it tells you nothing about what's going on in the book, and I think that actually hurts the book, because you have no clue what they're talking about. You just see this glowing skeleton, and you would think that it has something to do with the time Hal Jordan was the Spectre, but it doesn't at all. And really, that scene doesn't even happen in the book. It's a cool image, and I'm sure they were just like, draw something Halloween themed, but it doesn't really work. The art in the Sinestro book is definitely more inferior. I think Sinestro looks like he has like weird jowls very often. I know it's supposed to be like lines on his face from like age or something, but it just makes him look kind of freaky at times. Also, the surreal factor of it is masked by the fact that there's not a lot of backgrounds. They're using lightning effects to conceal the fact that it's just stars in the background. So while I'm sure it took a long time to draw the monsters, it really looks a little lazy that there's no background imagery for most of that story. But I just didn't care for the Sinestro story. I was bored with it. But the main story definitely made up for it. I thought that was a lot of fun. And I'm going to recommend this. This two-parter was probably the best one that I've read so far out of all of the Night Terrors micro series. Not just because the hero turns the table on the bad guy, but because it's probably the most comic book oriented. It actually has something to do with the Night Terrors story because Hal's going to be in Night's End apparently. But it was also showing the hero overcoming what is presented to him by his enemy, and he's taking a lot of joy in turning the tables on the bad guy. It was just a fun read, and I highly recommend these. If you're reading the Green Lantern series, issue 2 leads into Night Terrors Green Lantern number 1, and if you're enjoying that series, don't skip over these. I think you'll have fun reading them. So strong recommendation on this two-parter. That's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors Robin, Issue 2. This is the final installment of the two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023 that ties into the Night Terrors mini-series. This was written by Kenny Porter with art by Miguel Mendoza, Adriano Lucas on colors, Tom Napolitano on letters. Cover was by Ivan Reyes, Danny Miki, and Brad Anderson. Jessica Burby, assistant editor. Adriana Totoro, editor. Ben Abernathy, group editor. So Robin is sitting around on his childhood bed feeling sorry for himself and moping. Meanwhile, Jason's in some trouble of his own, fighting a bunch of monstrous red hoods and not doing very well. They both end up in this sort of nether area that's just this purple space with a little bit of island land for them to sit on and kind of gaze at each other and have a little heart-to-heart where they tell each other how great they really are and how Batman failed Jason, not his own moral failings and desire to murder people, not his need for revenge after dying at the hands of the Joker. No, they're both just so wonderful and great. We have to hear about that for several pages where they just validate each other and lift each other up, you know, like grown men do. No, wait, they don't do that, ever. Might get a pep talk here and there, but this borders on relationship therapy. It was really obnoxious. I don't know what that was about, but grown men don't talk to each other like that. And it happens throughout the rest of the book. Then they just sort of snap out of whatever funk they were in and then start beating up on the bad guys, and then they wake up and validate each other a little more before going off to do something in another book. It just says the end. It doesn't tell you that they're gonna play a major part in Night's End or anything like that. So it was just ends. Although I like the cover. I think the cover's really well done. It has nothing to do with what's going on in the book at all. You never see Jason Todd or Tim Drake pick up a crowbar at all. The Red Hood creatures have the crowbars, so whoever drew this had no idea what the book was even about. But it is a well done image that probably would have got me to buy the book at some point. And I regret buying this, because while the interior art isn't too bad, it's actually a little better than the first installment, I thought. The story is horrifically dumb and lazy. It's just them sitting around talking about how great the other one is, and they list reasons, and Insomnia is trying to taunt them a little bit, even though it's not really Insomnia, it's just this monstrous version of them. This was stupid. What a complete waste of $5. Don't buy this. It was really bad, and it was pointless because it doesn't even tie into Night Terrors at all. It just is a sidetrack thing that doesn't really have anything to do with anything, like most of these little micro series issues, but some of them are pretty good. This was just, oh, you're so wonderful for half the book, and it was a complete joke. This is worse than bad writing. It's boring. If it was bad enough, I could at least laugh at it, but this wasn't even that. What offends me the most about spending $5 on this book is that it's completely forgettable and boring. It went nowhere, nothing of value was gained, and it was insulting to my intelligence to have to read this. So I'm not going to recommend this. If somebody gives it to you for free, they're not your friend and they don't like you. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Night Terror's Shazam Issue 2. This is a two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023 that ties into the Night Terrors event. This issue was written by Mark Waid, pencils by Roger Cruz, inks by Wellington Diaz. Arif Prianto was the colorist, Troy Pateria on letters, cover by Dan Mora, assistant editor Rebecca Bonahan, Paul Kaminsky editor. Cover's okay. It does relate a little bit to what's going on in the book, but it just seems a bit generic. Probably could have been a little more exciting, but at least it has some sense of peril and action in it, which is more than you get most of the time at DC these days. So Mary is pushing back against evil Billy, and she quickly jumps over to other people's dreams to try and help them so the other members of her family can wake up as well. So she helps them individually defeat their nightmares, some of which are fairly pedestrian, getting picked on at school, adults telling you what to do, that sort of thing. General insecurities that people have. She has to help her foster parents in a different way than the others, which was interesting, but evil Billy keeps trying to beat her up, and she pushes back, and the other family members show up to help out as well. So again, Insomnia is really not in this in a direct way. He's mostly just sort of a nightmare creature, I guess, a generic nightmare creature posing as Billy, but overall I thought it was pretty fun. It's an interesting story about family and people's insecurities and how one person can make a difference in other people's lives, that sort of thing. Overall, though, I didn't much care for the art. It's not my favorite style. It's very disproportionate, very anime influenced, and it doesn't really work for this type of story, and it does at times look very amateurish. This is more like art I'd expect in a low-selling Dynamite book or some other indie work, but the artist has a good sense of perspective and is able to do more than just some flat, boring images, so I guess there's probably a market for this style. I just don't care for it. I think it's a little too cartoonish, and not in a good way. Not in a fun cartoon way, but in a Steven Universe, what's proportions? I don't understand. That kind of way. So I will recommend reading it, but only if you get it for a couple bucks. The story's good, but the art really holds it back. But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors The Flash, Issue 2. This, as usual, is a two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023 that ties into the Night Terrors event. This was written by Alex Pagnadel, art by Daniel Bayliss and Tom Derenick, colors by Igor Monti and Pete Pantazzi, letters by Simon Bolin, cover by Werther Del Adera, assistant editor Rebecca Bonahan, edited by Chris Rosa, group editor Paul Kaminsky. I don't like the cover because it in no way relates to what's going on in the book. Insomnia makes a cameo of sorts, and that's about it. He's not the villain of the story, and he's only kind of peripherally and even involved in this. So it's a very misleading cover, and it's supposed to tie into the Night Terrors thing, but it really doesn't. It's just its own two-part story. So the nightmare for Barry continues as he continues to go back in time to try and save Wally, and it's mutating him horribly so that he looks incredibly monstrous. And finally he figures out that he could go to the future to try and get what he needs, and he ends up running into Zoom, and Thawne is faster and stronger than him, but Barry's not there to be his friend. He's there to steal the Speed Force from him so that he has enough speed to go back in time and stop this creature once and for all, but he still can't do it. Instead he runs into this giant monstrous amalgamation of his different attempts, and he doesn't really come out of the nightmare. He's kind of forced out of it. Unlike some of the others, he doesn't overcome the nightmare. He just sort of succumbs to it, and it's a very interesting take on what happens when confronting your worst demons and failures, because while he tries to kill the monster, he ends up becoming part of it, and he's woken up in a much different way. It's a pretty disturbing story in a lot of ways. I thought the art, although Barry looks incredibly goofy about most of the issue, it's actually not that bad. When you see people in costume, people out of costume, they have no lips like usual. They have little ridges where their bottom lip would be, but they don't have top lip. I think some of the shots needed work, where especially in the hospital scenes where he's talking to his mom, she looks a little weird at times, and there's limbs that look excessively out of place or misproportioned, but otherwise some of the art looks really, really good, especially the scenes where he's fighting Reverse Flash. Those scenes were really well done, and the end of the book looked great, but overall the plot was pretty fun. It was a bit depressing that Barry couldn't overcome the nightmare that he was in and couldn't really see out of it, even though he was sort of aware that he was in Nightmare. It was definitely not one of the worst micro series that I've read for this. It was a pretty dark story, but it was pretty well done, and that surprised me because after reading the Punchline ones and the Poison Ivy ones, this was a really nice change of pace because it was much better written and had better art. So while there are minor flaws with the art that I think the artist can work on over time, it really was functional. It was a decent story. Is it worth the cover price? Not really, but if you could get it for a little over half cover price, I would say check it out. It was a pretty interesting take on what happens in Nightmares. Compared to the other Night Terror stuff, this is definitely one of the better two-parters. But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Night Terror's Zatanna issue 2. This is a two-part micro-series from DC Comics from 2023 that ties into the Night Terror's mini-series. This issue was written by Dennis Culver, drawn by David Baldion, colored by Rain Burrito, lettered by Pat Brousseau, edited by Ben Abernathy. Main cover by David Baldion and Rain Burrito, which that cover is actually pretty boring because although it does kind of relate to what's going on in the book in a way, it has a lot of dead space where it shouldn't, and I can't even figure out what mass of hair over there is supposed to be that covers up part of Zatanna's name. It just doesn't work at all. Proportionally, Zatanna should probably be larger and more centered. It just doesn't work out from the viewer's perspective. Your eyes just drawn to this part in the clouds and not anything else. So Zatanna is on the run from the evil robot man known as the Rustbringer, which is wasting a really cool name on a two-part micro series. And she's trying to outrun the other Sleepless Knights, but she's having a lot of problems with that because although she's immune to the effects of this magical space hidden underneath the Hull of Justice, she still is suffering from self-doubt, and the Sleepless Knights are making her father's ghost appear to her and reinforcing that doubt. But she is smart enough to try and come up with a plan, and she manages to find her courage and confidence and turn the tables on the bad guys. There's a stupid fist bump at the end, which really didn't need to happen. Stop trying to be cool, DC. It's not really working out. In a couple years, the fist bump may be a forgotten relic of the past, like the forearm bump in baseball, so it's just a silly thing to do. But overall, the story's not bad. There are some pretty cool parts, and the art is a bit of a mixed bag. I don't like the way the artist does expressions. Like when Zatanna looks shocked, she has weird anime mouth, but otherwise, the artist has a lot of talent, and I think the backgrounds look really cool, and the monsters look pretty good. Robot Man's legs should probably be a little thicker than the little stickman legs that he's running around on. And like I said, it's not my favorite style, but it's functional, and it's a lot better than some of the other similar styles I've seen. And the colorist did a really good job. So the story's pretty decent. The art's okay for what it is. Not my favorite, but it's still functional. Is it worth the $4? Not really. It's worth about $2, maybe $3. But it wasn't bad. This issue was better than the first one, I thought. So if you're interested in the Night Terror stuff or superheroes having nightmares, this is not that bad of one to pick. And the team up of Zatanna and Robot Man, making them kind of weird buddy cop duo, was pretty interesting. So not the worst of the micro series, but not the best either. But if you can find it cheap enough, it might be worth the read. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terror's Catwoman issue 2. This is a two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023 and ties into the Night Terror's miniseries. This was written by Tini Howard, art by Leila Leitz, colors by Marissa Louise, Josh Reed on letters, Leila Leitz with Adriana Lucas on the cover, Jessica Burby, associate editor, Jessica Chen, editor, Ben Abernathy, group editor. Cover's okay. Doesn't tell you anything about the book though, It's just a random pinup of Batman and Catwoman. Kinda boring. In this dream universe, the Joker is currently trying to be a big bad guy with an open button-up shirt like he's a 70s disco dancer who looks vaguely like the bully in A Christmas Story. And Catwoman is training Batman because he's an incompetent idiot who can't do anything on his own. At least that's how he appears in this book. And the Joker's just mildly annoying and obnoxious and very effeminate and a freak looking. And he tries to poison a bunch of parishioners at a church because Sister Zero is super nice and lets anybody in. And Bruce Wayne just kind of stands around a lot. So Batman and Catwoman have to go get some anti-venom, and there's some Medusa type Harlequins there that for some reason are going to bite people. I don't know. And Sister Zero has to interrogate the Joker. Then of course it's revealed that this is all part of the dream world, even though we all knew that because it's part of the Night Terrors books. This was, I don't know what this was supposed to be, but this was not a story. This was some sort of high school fan fiction disguised as a comic book. Some sort of weird power fantasy with nuns and the Joker posing as a priest. It's supposed to be surreal, but it ends up being nonsensical. And the art looks very rushed. Way worse than the previous issue. And some of the action scenes are just horribly done. The artist, I can see where they're able to draw pinups, but action scenes are really, really atrocious. And I don't like the way they draw people's faces and especially hair. Hair seems to be a real problem for this artist. At least they can draw lips, which is more than most of the pseudo-anime crowd can do. But I don't like this style of art. I don't think it fits well with an action story. It's more of teen romance because everybody looks like they're about 16 and they all have weird hairdos. So I did not care for the story. I thought it was an incredibly simplistic, lazy fan fiction. Something somebody would churn out 15 minutes before class when the project was due for their creative writing class. I think the artist has potential, but they really need to learn how to do hair and how to do action scenes if they're going to do action comic books. Otherwise, stick to like the teen melodrama stuff. That seems to be more in line with what the art style is more intended for. But yeah, this was garbage. This was not worth $5. It's not worth $1 if you pull it out of a bargain bin and you're like, I could risk $1 on this. No, don't bother. It's not worth it. Find it for free, have somebody give it to you, or don't bother because this is trash. This is afterthought material that somebody came up with while they were in the bathroom and then typed it out real quick to hand it in for a deadline. This is garbage. It really doesn't tie into Night Terrors in any way. It's nonsensical and it's really, really lazy. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors Nightwing Issue 2. This is the final installment of the two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023, which ties into the Night Terrors storyline. This issue is written by Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad, art by Danielle D. Niculo, colors by Adriano Lucas, Wes Abbott letterer, cover by Danielle D. Niculo with Adriano Lucas. Jessica Burby was the associate editor, Jessica Chen editor, Ben Abernathy group editor. So Nightwing is in Arkham Asylum in his nightmare, and his roommate is Jonathan Crane. Crane has made a crazy map that makes no sense, and we learn that other members of the Bat family are there as well. Batgirl, Spoiler, and Oracle are all there. And of course we have to validate the girls by saying they're so dangerous. There's a quote in here that says, especially the girl bats. I pity the fools who share a cell with them. And of course they're the bestest ever. So there's surreal versions of all the rogues gallery in there, and Nightwing tries to make a break for it to save Barbara, and they end up in the back rooms because why not just work in a creepypasta while we're at it too and get completely lazy. So they eventually find Barbara and try and free her, but Insomnia is there to make Nightwing relive the circus. Dick tries to turn the tables on Insomnia, but thankfully the girl bats show up because they're the bestest ever, because they tracked them through the back rooms all while being chased by their own personal demons according to the tech. We don't see any of that, we just hear about about how awesome they are, because why show us when he could just talk about it? And of course, Barbara has to save Dick, and Dick tries to save Crane, but Crane's not interested in that, and it ends in an incredibly dumb way. This was boring. The art's awful. I hated it. It's generic manga art. It's very forgettable, and everybody could be 1,000 different people. The same, clench your jaw and have jagged teeth that you would see in 1,000 mangas every time Dick is even moderately challenged on something. It is just uninspired, uninteresting, and kind of boring. I really didn't like this book. It didn't make a lot of sense. The addition of Spoiler and Batgirl were completely unnecessary. I know her name's Orphan now, but she was Batgirl in the 90s. Leave me alone. Don't bother commenting. I don't care. So Spoiler and Oracle and Orphan being in here, Barbara's the only one that makes sense. And it largely took away from anything involving Nightwing. He didn't solve anything. He just reacts to everything, and eventually Barbara saves him. It was boring. I didn't like this book. I'm going to forget all about it, about its existence, about having read it, and about the atrocious art, because I didn't enjoy any of it. And the price tag at $5 was vastly overdone. That's at best a $1 book, and I would be hard-pressed to even fork that much out for it at this point. So I'm not going to recommend this one. It didn't add anything to the Night Terrors storyline, and if anything, it made me feel stupider for having read it. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description for various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors Punchline Issue 2. This two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023 that ties into the Night Terrors event miniseries. This issue was written by Danny Lore, art by Lucas Mayer, colors by Alex Gamarez, Steve Wands on letters, Gleb Melnikov did the cover, Ben Abernathy was the editor. That cover has nothing to do with the story and was really boring. I don't know what it's supposed to be. She's peeling? Okay, what does that have to do with Night Terrors or the story that we're looking at? Oh yeah, absolutely nothing. So the cyber Batgirl thing just sort of gets forgotten as Punchline gets absorbed into a monitor, and of course she's on the internet because comic book writers of the modern era are obsessed with the internet. Apparently they spend all their time on there. So she makes a Dungeons & Dragons joke about falling damage because, oh, check out my nerd cred. Look how hip I am from 1977. And then of course she's complaining about what appears to be Twitter or YouTube, and there's a bunch of anonymous NPCs after her. Oh no! And she calls them gray-faced Anons, even though they're sort of tan. And that is of course a reference to a popular meme for NPCs of people that have no actual thought of their own. They just sort of follow the group. So she has to fight those, and she uses a button because the block button doesn't work. So she literally just pulls a button off of the web page and hits them with it. And she's harder and faster than they are. Haha, see, she's so awesome. And they're calling her fake the whole time. Oh my gosh, it's a metaphor for something. And then the Batgirl robot thing knocks her into a video, and there's commentary on that. A reference to rise and fall video trends. Those might be completely forgotten about in 5 years, so I guess that's something. Then she sees Insomnia for a minute, and she has to face her fears of the internet and the anonymous trolls. And she hits the like button at the end. Something you should do on this video is hit the like button. So there's a lot of lame computer jokes in here. The Batgirl thing is very much forgotten in the ham-fisted messaging about internet stuff. And if you're not real into spending hours and hours on YouTube or Twitter or various other social media platforms, this is gonna be completely alien to you and probably super boring. Possibly even more boring than it already was, because there's nothing more enthralling in a visual print media than commentary on social media. This was abysmally boring. The art was okay. I think the artist really needs to work on body proportions and stop using what appear to be 3D models, because the rigid movements of people, it really betrays that you're not comfortable enough with your anatomy lessons. So the art was only okay. It was a little rough at times, but I've seen worse out of DC. I think this issue actually looked a little better than the first one. But this story was nonsensical trash. It's just somebody complaining about about the internet in a very, very, very thinly veiled, whiny metaphor. And this was absolutely not worth the price. Unfortunately, I had to buy the fancy variant cover because the regular issue was sold out, so I ended up paying an extra $1 for this hot garbage. So my cover was by Dustin Guinan. Like I said, the cover's trash. It's better than the story, which is a very low bar to set. The interior art was just okay, acceptable. I wouldn't pay money for this again ever. Don't buy this. This is just lazy, predictable trash that we've been seeing for the past several years out of the big two. It's self-indulgent social commentary that the writer thinks is important, but very, very few people outside of their little group of friends actually cares about. Normal, healthy people do not spend that much time on the internet unless they work there, and they really don't want to read this in their entertainment. This was stupid and a complete waste of time and paper. Absolute trash. That's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terror's Superman issue 2. This is a two-part micro-series from 2023 and it ties into the Night Terror's event mini-series. This issue is written by Joshua Williamson, art by Tom Riley, colors by Nathan Fairbairn, letters by Ariana Maher, cover by Gleb Melnikov, assistant editor was Jillian Grant, edited by Paul Kaminsky. I don't much care for the cover. I don't know why Supergirl's one leg is like 7 feet long, and her back leg, which is supposed to probably look smaller because it's a perspective shot, looks normal sized. So I don't know what's going on with that giant stilt leg. That doesn't come into play at all in the book. There are some skeletons in the book, but the cover is very, very deceptive and has really nothing to do with the story. We do have this flashback of Kara's nightmare on Krypton where her dad showed her a skeleton and it came to life, but in the nightmare it kills him, and then all these zombie Karas come out of the ground wearing her old costumes, and that's how she broke into Superman's dreams somehow, so they have to deal with that. And in the real world, Aquaman is helping things along. He's found Superman and he's taking him to Supercorp for some reason, and he's also got the Atlanteans working on securing the planet and assisting with that, even though Mura seems to object, and she seems to have some very anti-surface world bias because they're polluters or whatever. Kind of racist, really. So they get Superman hooked up, and Mura figures out a way to wake people up because they figured out why the Atlanteans aren't damaged by this nightmare wave where other people are. So her and Arthur figure that out, but he has to fight off one of the nightmare creatures while Mura tries to work her magic. Also, it looks like Marilyn Moonlight is kind of aware of the situation as well. She doesn't do anything. She just sort of looks at sleeping Lois and Kara and is like, "Nah, everybody's asleep," and that's about all we get out of that. And Superman and Supergirl are able to get into Lois's dream, and that's when the Super Reaper shows up and Clark has to overcome his nightmare. And finally, everybody is starting to wake up, and they have to reconvene for the big final fight in Night's End. This was only okay. The Aquaman parts would have been more interesting if Mura wasn't such a whiner about everything. She really doesn't seem to like surface world people. She's kind of a bigot that way. I mean, their culture is different, but the surface world people are still people, and she doesn't want to help them, which is pretty disgusting actually, coming from somebody that's supposed to be a hero. It's very out of character for her, but they've changed a lot of these characters around in the last decade to make them much more unlikable and much more heavily focused on activism and intolerance than anything else. So Mura's generalized intolerance towards surface people because there are some polluters is pretty despicable. But my main complaint about the book is I hate the art. I think it's blocky. People's faces change over the course of the issue, and I don't think it's consistent. There's too much heavy line work. I think if the inking wasn't so heavy, maybe that would change it a little bit. There are some decent panels. The artist understands what they're doing. I just don't care for this style. So for the style it's in, maybe people like it. The colorist did a good job though. The colors really popped out, probably because of the heavy outlines on everybody and heavy shading, but it's a mixed bag because that brings out the art more, and unfortunately that's the element that I didn't like. And I thought the story was okay. The way they figured out how to wake people up was actually really good and really interesting, and really does affect how the story could have played out if they had uncovered this sooner. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but if you're going to pick this up, there's no need to pay the full cover price for this. Get it out of a discount bin and read it that way. I would recommend reading it if you're reading the Night Terrors stuff because of the elements in here that do relate to how they could wake people up. And I was happy to see the Atlanteans step up and help people that they would largely seem to consider enemies through their own bigotry and intolerance. But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors Wonder Woman issue 2. This is the second installment of a two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023 that ties into the Night Terrors miniseries. And there are two stories here. The main story of Wonder Woman is written by Josie Campbell, art by Juan Ferreira, Pat Brousseau on letters, Jia Lee and June Chung on the main cover, Chris Rosa, the associate editor, Brittany Holzer, editor, Paul Kaminsky, group editor. There's also a backup story for Nubia, and this is part 2 of that, written by Stephanie Williams, art by Megan Hetrick, colors by Marissa Louise, letters by Becca Carey, associate editor Chris Rosa, edited by Brittany Holzer, and group editor Paul Kaminsky on that one as well. The cover's okay. It's got that kind of retro 30s look for Wonder Woman, that almost Art Deco sort of interpretation, but with the weird proportions that you come to expect from Jia Lee. And I didn't hate it. It's not my favorite. I like the red background, really kind of makes the figures pop out. I think they probably should have made the figures bigger though, but I don't know, it's just okay. It's a stark contrast from the horrific interior artwork. So Wonder Woman is not fighting the serpent that we left off on last time because apparently he just swallowed her and sat there docilely while Bobo laid there in a pile of fear and probably peed himself. Meanwhile, Wonder Woman is fighting this multi-armed creature and it's showing her all these different nightmares, scenarios, these goddesses of war that she could become, and various insecurities, her relationship to Zeus, all that sort of stuff. But Wonder Woman quickly overcomes that and then pops out of the serpent's mouth and begins to tie everything up with her magic lasso, which apparently is infinitely long. And then the rest of the Justice League Dark is freed, even though we never saw half of them in the other issue. And they get about their way of helping everybody else. The Nubia story, she's fighting Gaia with a knife on a rope, I guess. And then she wakes up in her bed in her armor and cries a lot. Both these stories were incredibly boring. The main story kind of rambles on and Wonder Woman gives this big lecture to everybody at the end about how heroes rise up. It was very, very contrived and not very exciting. The dialogue really was rough. The art in this one is significantly worse than the first issue, I thought. It looks rushed and lazy, even for the style that it's in, which is pretty bad to begin with. But it just seemed like there was a lot of talking that didn't need to be in here, a lot of caption boxes that I didn't care about. The whole thing just seemed like a money grab. The Nubia story was boring and I don't really care about these characters at all. It was just a backup story for the sake of having a backup story. And why is Nubia's hair like 50 pounds? It's gigantic. There's just so many problems with this book. I think they were trying to be overly dramatic and make these like poignant moments that just come off as tiresome and a little preachy. And I think it's really a sign of bad writing for both stories. So I'm not impressed with this at all. The cover is the best thing about both the issues of this micro series, and it doesn't seem to have any impact on the Night Terror storyline at all. I don't remember Insomnia being in here. I may have blacked that out, but this was just nonsensical waste of paper and a lot of bad art. So I'm in no way going to recommend this. If you're going to buy it, have somebody give it to you for free, because you'll probably be able to find somebody that's willing to do that with something this poorly assembled. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Night Terrors issue 4. This is the final part of the mini-series. Just kidding, there's an end cap book that has nothing to do with the numbering sequence. They just wanted to make another number 1 so they could trick people into buying it. This is written by Joshua Williamson, art by Giuseppe Camuncoli, Stefano Nisi, and Casper Weingard. Colors by Frank Martin and Casper Weingard. Lettered by Troy Pateri. Edited by Ben Abernathy. Covers by Ivan Reyes, Danny Miki, and Brad Anderson. I like the cover, it's pretty good. It does kind of relate to what's going on because Deadman does play a central part in this, as do Wesley Dodds and Batman. So Deadman is still inside of Batman, and Robin, of course, is little Gary Sue, so he's tagging along, and Wesley Dodds is there in his gross undead form trying to help out. Now Robin has a little bit of a scare, and Deadman has to see some of his own nightmares as he makes his way to where Insomnia is sleeping. Now we do find out why Insomnia is the way he is and why he blames the Justice League, and it's a really selfish reason. And the art style is significantly different for that sequence because it takes place in Insomnia's head, and the art is incredibly jarringly different, and not in a good way. I think it's a vastly inferior art style that is really more like an image book with some over-the-top facial features that don't really match up. Also, the positioning of the bodies looks a little weird too, but it looks like Deadman may have made an error in judgment when he went to Arkham, and now it is set up for the conclusion, which is in Knight's Terror, Knight's End. Even though this is the mini-series, they again have to trick you into buying these Alpha and Omega books instead of just making it a 6-issue mini-series. There's some fairly mature stuff in this book that's probably going to be a little bit too much for younger readers, but I would say it's okay for teens and up. The story was okay, I didn't have a problem with that, but like I said, some of the art is a bit weak, and the little end cap things where Deadman is sitting around talking to the audience are really annoying. I don't know why they started doing this in comics. It's become a big trend to break the fourth wall, and we've seen it done for several years now. It used to be restricted to the goofy characters or characters like Deadpool that were kind of silly, and now they do it all the time with these little introductory things, and it's really annoying. It breaks the sense of the story, and I get what they're going for, it just doesn't really work for the story that they're doing, and it rarely ever is done well. So overall, I thought the issue was pretty good. It's just some of the art is pretty weak. About halfway through the book, it really kind of turns into this slightly inferior art style that is really badly done. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but I will recommend it because I thought the core story was pretty good, but it's really not worth the cover price. This is going to be one of those mini-series like Days of Vengeance or Millennium that you can pull out of a discount bin and read it for significantly cheaper in like a year or two. It's still a pretty fun mini-series. It's just not going to be a sought-after collector's item. You should be able to find it relatively cheap, but I thought it was worth a read. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors Action Comics Issue 2. This is a 2-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023, and it ties into the Night Terrors mini-series. And like all too many comics, this one is split into 2 stories. The first one is Power Girl with writer Leah Williams, art by Vasco Garegov, colors by Alex Gamarez, letters by Becca Carey, assistant editor Jillian Grant, edited by Brittany Holzher, group editor Paul Kaminsky. Then there is the Super Family story written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, art by Miko Suyayan and Fico Osio, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., letters by Dave Sharp, assistant editor Jillian Grant, edited by Paul Kaminsky. The cover was by Rafa Sandoval and Matt Herms. It's okay, it's just kind of generic. I was a little bored with it, but it's not the worst that I've seen for this Night Terrors stuff. So Power Girl, who also goes by the name Paige, keeps getting put in these nightmare scenarios, and then she wakes up in bed and things are still nightmares, and this happens repeatedly until she finally just wakes up and pets a cat's butt. It does have a brief lead in to Power Girl number 1, something about a Kryptonian spacecraft piece that can take over people. It doesn't seem that interesting. The story was kind of convoluted and the art is pretty generically horrible. It's very forgettable. Everything looks kind of askew, and it continually mixes in this sort of half manga art, especially on the eyes and mouth. mouth. The eyes look big and boogly and kind of creepy at times, and the artist can't draw lips from the look of it. And when they do draw them, most of the time they're exaggerated. So I just didn't care for the art style. I think it's garbage. The backgrounds look pretty good, and the colorist did a good job, but it's definitely not an art style that I care for, especially with the weird giant eyeballs. The second story with Superboy / Cyborg Superman, Hank Henshaw, trying to terrify people in their dreams was kind of boring as well. The premise was kind of silly, and they focus heavily on these two kids who I just figured out from the storyline are apparently from Warworld, and they don't really tell you that until like 3/4 of the way through the storyline. They could have led with that, maybe introduced the characters, but they just assume you know who all these people are. So if you don't know about Chinese Superman and you didn't read the Warworld storyline, you're not going to have any idea about 3/4 of these people are. Connor Kent and Hank Henshaw are the only ones that have been around for decades. I'm not sure where they're going with this, but these are all ancillary characters that I know almost nothing about, and in most cases don't really care about. But there was this kind of twist on the story that it's not just them that are trapped in the nightmare, so it was okay, and I didn't really care for it. And Connor wearing a torn sleeveless shirt with a weird haircut, it just doesn't work for me. It looks silly. And I don't care about Keenan, I don't really care about Steele's daughter, and I really don't care about these kids. And Cyborg Superman, I don't know why they keep calling him that, because he's Hank Henshaw. He should have a different name. Probably get rid of the... If he hates Superman so much, why is he still wearing the Superman shield? I think that's a character that could have been redeemed a long time ago. They had plenty of opportunities to turn him into a hero, or at least into an anti-hero, or somebody that is just not straight up generically villainous, because his power set is actually pretty interesting, and his origin story where he constantly blames Superman for his family's death, it just doesn't really make that much sense. So he would have made a much more interesting character if he was being redeemed the same way they did with Atomic Skull. Both characters have the possibility of becoming not necessarily heroes, but at least anti-heroes that aren't laughably evil. But instead of doing that, they just make Henshaw into this generic bad guy, and that's all he is in this, is a generic bad guy. So I think it kind of failed on that front, but the art I liked better than the main story, and I think the colorist did a good job here as well. Very vibrant colors, but this book just didn't do anything for me. It was not that interesting. Neither of the stories were that compelling. They just sort of wrap up really quickly, and they probably should have each been a one-shot. I'd also say if you're going to pick it up, try and get it for like $1, because it's really not worth much more than that. At best, it's middle of the road, and at worst, it's very, very forgettable. So not really worth tracking down, and definitely not worth the cover price. But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terror's Angel Breaker Issue 2. This is the second installment of a two-part microseries from DC Comics in 2023 that ties into the Night Terror's miniseries. This issue is written by Tim Seeley, art by Aki Bright, colors by Brian Reber, letters by Sadia Temofuente, edited by Ben Abernathy, cover by Matteo Loli. Cover's okay. It's kind of generic, but I don't know. It doesn't work for me. It's kind of trying too hard to be creepy, I guess. So anyway, girl Elric is at this secret Cobra school, and she's arguing with Raptor about what to do, and how this Nanny Gillo is a monster from her nightmares that's apparently come to reality, so they have to fight with that. This nanny creature, who looks suspiciously like something on a Death Note, is going around trying to kill everybody one by one, while Raptor and Angel kind of argue for a little while. The kids are not immune in here, unlike a lot of horror stories. Unfortunately, American horror tends to really gloss over the actual risk to children, and they don't pull that punch here. So I guess good for them on actually putting everybody at risk. So one by one, the group is getting whittled down by this evil creature who is taking on the guise of their nightmares or wishes. And Angel, who is totally not a knockoff of Elric with Stormbringer, Angel Breaker, has to take out the monster somehow and solve the problem. But by doing so, they would also put themselves to sleep, so only the person actually holding this thing they're looking for, the MacGuffin, is able to stay awake. And it does kind of lead into Night Terror's Night's End with the one person that's going to be staying awake and the other two falling asleep. Totally not purring either. I was bored out of my mind reading this. This was just not interesting at all. It was incredibly generic on every front. The art is forgettably generic manga with creatures that look like they were just ripped off of other manga and anime, and the faces all look incredibly generic. Either they're out of Steven Universe or some manga I've never read and don't care about. Everything about this offended me that I paid $4 for it. This was garbage. I hated it. Didn't like the storyline. I don't like the characters. The dialogue is ludicrously laughable in parts because it's just so over the top silly. It's trying way too hard to be a manga, and it's not working. I expected better out of Tim Seeley. He can be a good writer at times, and this is absolutely not some of his best work. This is trash. So don't waste your money. If you're gonna buy this, make sure you get it really cheap, but it would be much better if you could have somebody just loan you a copy so you don't actually have to spend any money on it. I don't plan on keeping my copy. I'm going to give it away to somebody I don't like so that it's out of my house because I just don't want bad literature in my home. And this is awful. That's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terror's Detective Comics Issue 2. This is a two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023, and it ties into the Night Terror's event miniseries. This issue was written by Dan Waters, art by Riccardo Federici, Mike Perkins, and Stefano Raffaelli. Colors by Brad Anderson, Mike Spencer, and Lee Lothbridge. Steve Wands on letters. Cover by Riccardo Federici. Jessica Chen, Ariana Totoro, and Ben Mears were the editors. Ben Abernathy, group editor. The cover's okay, it's just a little dark and looks a little washed out. If the colors had been a little brighter, I think it would have worked better. So with one person dead from their so-called gift from the parapriests, Gordon is trying to figure out what to do. And while he is slowly shattering like Mr. Glass in an M. Night Shyamalan movie, he still has to stop the other people that were gifted by these demon knockoff Cenobite things. And he finds out who one of them is, a guy named Mortimer Blake, and Gordon confronts him, and things don't really go Gordon's way, but they don't go the other way either. He sort of tricks Mortimer at a very great cost to himself as more of him shatters. And he finds out from the parapriests that he knows who the other person is, and he didn't want to admit it to himself, so he has to hobble along while they're watching. And unfortunately, he does know who the other person is, but it just took a long time for him to admit it to himself. And it turns out that she found this interdimensional artifact on the dark web, because that's where everything mysterious is found, and she just wanted to fix Gotham. Well, it turns out this really is just a nightmare, and we get a brief glimpse of Insomnia's eyes as things begin to fold in on themselves, but that doesn't mean these creatures aren't real or that they're not coming back, because they set it up for a sequel, and these are interdimensional creatures of imagination or some silly, goofy nonsense like that. Overall, the story's not bad. It just doesn't really fit in with the Batman universe. This would have been a much more interesting story if it had been new characters in a horror movie setting. The detective figures out that there's these extra-dimensional creatures being summoned by some cultists and tries to put a stop to it. And it turns out he knows one of the cultists. I think that would have made an interesting movie idea, but it doesn't really fit in with the Batman universe or the larger DC universe. So I like the core idea of it, this sort of overly complicated monkey's paw idea, but it just really didn't seem to fit in with DC main continuity. Even as like an Elseworld story, it just sort of didn't fit in. It just didn't seem right. I think if this had been a Vertigo story 30 years ago, it probably would have been much better received because it would have been outside of the main continuity and its own little thing, and they explored the characters a little more in depth and fleshed them out and made them new characters and more interesting that way. As it is, trying to use existing characters just didn't really work for it, and I think actually hurt the story. But the art is good, it's just not really a style I'm in love with, but it's pretty good for what it is, and and there are some pretty disturbing scenes. This is absolutely a mature reader's book, so I will recommend it because it was well done, but it just really didn't seem to fit in with mainstream DC Comics that well. So if you can find it for a reasonable price, I'd say check it out, but it's definitely not worth the cover price. I'd feel more comfortable at about half cover price. So that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Night Terrors Harley Quinn issue 2. This is a two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023 that ties into the Night Terrors storyline. Written by Tini Howard, art by Hayden Sherman. Triona Farrell did the colors, Steve Wan's letters, Hayden Sherman did the cover. Associate editor Jessica Burby, Ariana Totoro did the editing, and Ben Abernathy was the group editor. The main story finds Harley annoyed that somehow the multiverse wants her to join the Justice League, so she ends up going into one of the universes where she's the heroic Harlequin, and she swears a lot because that's funny, right? Because it's a Silver Age style book, so it's really over the top with cheese and silliness because those were aimed at juveniles, and apparently the writer didn't understand that. So they have to mock the Silver Age for a little while, and Harley finds Poison Ivy, only to learn Brainiac's back. Oh no! And he wants her brains, and he can read her thought bubbles, and she's really annoyed by the thought bubbles because she can see them, which is really stupid. So the storyline is basically just mocking the Silver Age books and the style of writing that was done with them. It's really insulting to older fans that enjoyed those books as kids because those books were aimed at children. They were aimed at elementary and middle school children, and the author of this doesn't seem to understand that, or is just blatantly mocking people that grew up with that era of comics. In the end, Harley meets some lady who's a cosmic being and says how smart and validates Harley a bunch and tells her she has some glorious mission. I don't care. It was really dumb. It was insulting to the Silver Age books that are the foundation of modern comics, and it was just lazy writing. The dialogue was uninspired and boring. The art's a real mixed bag, mostly an homage to Silver Age stuff, but poorly done. I didn't care for it. It wasn't the worst I've ever seen, but it definitely wasn't the best. It could have been better. There were some really good parts early on, but mostly it was just very mediocre, and I was bored. The backup story is by Leah Williams with art by PJ Holden, colors by Lee Lothridge, letters by Hassan Otsmane Allahu, Jessica Burby, associate editor, Ariana Totoro, editor, Ben Abernathy, group editor. Apparently Ben Templesmith couldn't be bothered to finish the story, so they got PJ Holden to do it. And it picks up with the silliness of last issue, where apparently you can just cut through walls and travel. It's very silly. And it turns out old lady Harley, who looks really old now, is apparently on a ship inside of a quantum vacuum, and the story tries to be really smart with the science stuff and ends up coming off as pretentious, speculative fan fiction. It's really obnoxious, and the old Harley gets absorbed into the collective consciousness of the ship, which becomes its fuel, and the new Harley takes their place, and the cycle continues. It would have been fine as a short story not involving a comic book character. Even as a comic book, it could have been interesting with a different character that wasn't a superhero, and it could have been some kind of series of some sort, at least semi-interesting, but it tries too hard to sound smart, and the art is absolute trash. This is amateur hour art that I would expect to find in an indie book published in like 1982. It is very, very badly done. Perspective shots are awkward at best. Body proportions are laughably bad. This is far from professional work. It's not even worthy of being Dynamite. This is a self-published art style that definitely needs refinement and a lot of work and probably some art classes. All in all, this was a waste of money. Don't bother unless you get it for free somewhere. Even as a dollar bin material, it wasn't very good. The first issue was slightly better, actually, and I thought this was a disappointing waste of money and a giant waste of my time. And the cover doesn't really help because it doesn't tell you anything about what's going on, so it's a complete failure. But that's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors Titans Issue 2. This is the second installment of a two-part micro-series from DC Comics in 2023, and it ties into the Night Terrors event miniseries. This issue is written by Andrew Constant, Scott Golowiski, and Mike Norton are the artists. Ryan Cody and Hi-Fi did the colors, Wes Abbott letters, cover by Yannick Panquet and Dave McCaig, Chris Rosa, associate editor, Brittany Holzer, editor, Paul Kaminsky, group editor. Cover's okay, it does relate to what's going on in the book, more so to the first issue, but it does relate. These are the nightmare versions of the Titans that they think they are, or something. So the Titans quickly figure out what's going on. The people they've been fighting, these goo monsters, are inmates, and the unidentified person with the Titans is slowly starting to come to terms of a self-realization here, thanks to Raven. We find out that the Titans Tower was originally a prison that's been repurposed, and it was Bloodhaven Private Prison, so we get a commentary on prisons in here for no apparent reason whatsoever, and we've come to find out the secret of who this mystery person is. I thought it was going to be a female version of Nightwing, but it's not. This is actually way dumber than that, and it is really just sort of, if you've ever seen the episode where the TARDIS takes mortal form, then you've read a lot of this. So it just wasn't that exciting. Raven does end up falling asleep because it turns out she was using like an astral projection. And the way she's positioned when they show her falling asleep is her butt is right on Donna Troy's face. It's really disturbing to come to that realization that if she farts in her sleep, Donna's getting a mouthful of that. So then the nightmare version of Raven pops up, but it's up to this mystery person to save the day and confront herself and be more than she is. So they have a little heart-to-heart about change and reform, and I don't care. This had potential, but it went off the rails into some sort of weird allegory for prison reform or something. I don't know. It was not that interesting. I would definitely not pay more than $1 if I were to buy this again, but $5 is ridiculous for this trash. The art's pretty good overall. It's just the story is silly, and I didn't care about in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't go into any depth. It just is a very surface level story with a bit of a message that they're trying to wedge in there. It comes off as very silly and trite in this. It's something that like a high schooler might come up with while smoking weed with their friends. So I don't much care for that. I thought it was pseudo-intellectual laziness. Unless you're a really big Titans fan, I would say skip this or grab it for $1 out of a dollar bin. The art is the only saving grace. Otherwise, the story turned into total dog crap about 2 pages into this one. That's gonna do it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Night Terrors Night's End, Issue 1. This is a one-shot tie-in to the Night Terrors miniseries from DC Comics in 2023. This was written by Joshua Williamson, art by Howard Porter, Giuseppe Camuncoli, Stefano Nisi, and Trevor Hairsign. Colors by Rain Burrito, letters by Troy Pateri, edited by Ben Abernathy. Covers by Howard Porter and Romulo Fajardo Jr., and the cover's okay. The heroes are real tiny for some reason, but it really didn't do anything for me. Deadman and Insomnia probably should have been a little smaller, and the center of their heads further up in the image, and you could have made Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman bigger and had the bad guys a little bigger. Otherwise, it just looks like they're in some sort of mess. You can't really tell the bad guys at first glance. So the first couple of pages are a giant waste of time. It's some kid having a nightmare, and they use this as an end cap for the stories. The first part is about 5 pages of this kid having a nightmare and, oh, superheroes are scary. It's just a giant waste of space. And then there's this big 2-page splash recapping the entire miniseries for you. And it looks like Insomnia is winning, and he gives Deadman a family to kind of get Deadman out of the way. So with Deadman distracted by dreams, he goes after the superheroes using the Nightmare Stone. Well, Deadman has to break out of the nightmare and help his friends and stop Insomnia. Wesley Dodds thankfully is there there to help out, and they have to break out the Dreamstone in order to try and stop him, and it looks like somebody may be making the ultimate sacrifice. That takes up the first 2/3 of the book. Insomnia does seem to suffer a fate that is pretty harsh, and he may be gone forever, but probably not. Somebody will dust him off in 6 months just to annoy all of us. There's some resolution with Dodds, and Batman takes a big nap. Seriously, they did like 2 pages devoted to Batman taking a nap. And then we get the end cap with the little kid being like, superheroes are scary, blah, blah. And then Amanda Waller shows up to be like, oh my god, everybody distrusts superheroes now because of nightmares. And we learn who ended up with the Nightmare Stone, and we get a new villain called Dr. Hate, which is super lazy. And Waller is apparently trying to destroy all superheroes because she's not the most overused character in DC history since Maxwell Lord. I really don't understand why they keep relying on this crutch of Amanda Waller. Just kill her off already. She's not a good character anymore. They've made her less interesting by constantly watering her down by doing the same stuff over and over again of trying to take out the Justice League and all the superheroes. It's really tiresome and overplayed. So I'm not impressed by that little lead into further storytelling. The main story was a little dragged out, especially with these end cap pieces with the little kid and her family. I thought that was just filler. There's a lot of large panels in here, and the first half of this issue could have been tacked on to issue 4 and made it an actual miniseries instead of forcing you to buy another issue that isn't part of the miniseries. So they're tricking you into having to spend an extra $6 that you really didn't need to spend. They could have put that part of this issue on that book and made it an extra $1. Instead, they did this to bump up sales, and it was really, really lazy. Also, the art looks pretty rushed in this one. The first half of the book looks fine, but once they get into the final fight, it's kind of a mess. The superheroes really don't do anything other than kill time for Deadman and Wesley Dodds to do something. And most of what was tied in from the micro series books, the little 2-parters they did, really was at best serviceable. It was just little appearances. None of those books really came into play with any of this. There was this big lead-in for the Batgun creature, the Super Reaver, and the Wonder Woman monster, and they were just henchmen, effectively, that were background filler for the fighting. That was it. They weren't characters in the book. They weren't big threats. They were just there to keep the main Justice League busy while Deadman and Wesley Dodds moved the story along. So I have to say, this was a huge miss for me. There's just too much pointless filler. A lot of this stuff could have been in another issue, and it would have made more sense. And instead, they want to put these little lead-ins in to other storylines, and I didn't care about those. I'm not buying those books. I don't care about Amanda Waller's plans because it has nothing to do with this story except peripherally, and it was really, really frustrating. The whole Dr. Hate thing was stupid, and apparently that's going to be some character we already know. I don't really care. I'm sure somebody somewhere cares, but it had nothing to do with the storyline, so I really didn't see the point in it. So if you're going to pick this series up, I would say grab it out of the bargain bin. The majority of it is fine, but they're obviously marketing this for the trade paperback or to get you to buy a whole bunch of single issues. Most of the 2-part stories that they did, where they suspended all the regular books to do these little 2-part micro series, were just not worth the money. And the handful that were interesting still weren't worth $4 or $5. There were only a few that really stood out as being quality. And the miniseries itself was largely fine, but it was definitely padded in this issue and First Blood in order to get you to buy those 2 issues instead of just making it a 6-part miniseries. So it was to trick speculators into picking up an issue 1 and to manipulate regular customers into having to buy 2 other issues because you're not going to understand the 4-part miniseries without Night Terror's First Blood and Night Terror's Night's End. You don't get a complete story. So it's the usual kind of marketing trick that I've come to expect from the big 2, and it's really disappointing to see. Also, about halfway through the book, most of the art started to look really rushed and kind of messy and a little sloppy. So I was really disappointed by a lot of things with this, so I'm not going to recommend it unless you can get it cheap. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.